Chapter 230. Chu Li was like her nemesis. Every time they fought, Chu Li would win. Under the premise of Lu Yurong and Chu Li, exposing her scars would definitely provoke her. As long as she was angry and lost her cool, her aura would not be so heavy and she would not be able to breathe. Song Shiling personally led the way. The group of people came to an abode and hurriedly left. Lu Yurong sat at the stone table in the small courtyard next to a plum tree. She suddenly slammed the stone table, and her eyes flashed coldly. "Lady, do you want to teach this heir to the high ducal lesson?" Xiao Ro whispered. Lu Yurong shook her head. "Don't lower yourself to his level. And Xiao, you go to Lady Song. Be careful. I think Chu Li will definitely come. I will not leave her side at all times," Xiao Ro said. Lu Yurong was followed by a maid, and the maid was holding a kitten in her arms. The kitten was white and flawless. Its eyes were closed, and it was sleeping soundly, unaffected by the outside world. "Just follow her. Don't push too hard," Lu Yurong said. "If Lady Song is in trouble, it will be hard to explain to Big Brother." "Okay," Xiao Ro nodded slightly. "I will let Elder She follow again," Lu Yurong said. Lu Yurong said, "Both of you, one on the outside and one on the inside, together with the Grandmasters from Hawaii Public House. Don't give Chu Li any chance. He'd better back off." She said the last sentence while biting her tongue. Xiao Ro said, "Lady is going personally. If he really dares to come, it will not end well." Lu Yurong smiled. This time, she came here quietly and hid it from everyone so that there would not be any problems here. Otherwise, if Chu Li really stole the bride, especially on the day of the wedding, the Run Public House's reputation would be completely gone. They would become a joke and a disgrace. If Chu Li really wanted to steal, he would probably act on that day. Song Yuning sat quietly in front of the dressing table and looked at her lovely face in the mirror. She sighed faintly. She could not help but think of Seo Taiying's smile, thinking of her upcoming marriage. She sighed again, inexplicably. Behind her stood a delicate little maid. She looked at her worriedly and said, "Miss, don't sigh." "What do you know?" Song Yuning sighed. "If I continue to sigh, I'll become an old woman." The young maidservant said tenderly, "The weather is so good today. Why don't we go to the back garden to admire the flowers?" "I'm not going. Her chrysanthemums are in full bloom." "She's so beautiful," said the maid. Song Yuning rolled her eyes at her in the mirror. "I'm not in the mood to appreciate flowers now. What else can we do?" The maidservant advised, "The marriage is already set. It is impossible to break the promise. It is better to forget about young Master Xiao." Song Yuning snorted. "What do you know? Why don't I understand?" The maid was unconvinced. "Isn't it just that you like young Master Xiao, but want to marry young Master Lu? I heard that young Master Lu is also a handsome and suave man." "So what?" Song Yuning snorted and said, "I said you don't understand, and you don't believe me. There are so many handsome men in the world. How can I like all of them?" "Then what should we do?" The servant girl said, "Since I have to be Madame Lu, I can only forget about young Master Xiao to avoid suffering. Are we women like this? We have no choice." "Humph." Song Yuning glared at her. "My lady, do you think young Master Xiao will kidnap the bride?" The maid whispered and looked outside the door. There were 4 grandmasters standing outside the boudoir. They did not leave the room for even a step. They were protecting and monitoring her. They were afraid that she would run away from the marriage. The maid understood that they must be guarding against young Master Xiao. "I hope he doesn't mess around." Song Yuning sighed. On one hand, she hoped that Seo Taiying would bring out his manly spirit and snatch her away, preventing her from marrying Lu Yulo. On the other hand, she did not want to come over and cause the E public house and the Ren public house to shed all pretenses of cordiality and fight to the death. If Xiao Taiying really kidnaps her, this was related to a man's dignity. Lu Yulo would definitely go crazy. The Ren public house was powerful, and the E public house would not be able to get away with it. They would definitely suffer heavy losses. If anything happened to Xiao Taiying, at this moment, footsteps were heard outside. Song Shiling laughed and said, "Little sister, it's me." He pushed the door open and came in with a smile on his face. "Am I disturbing you?" "Big brother," Song Yuning greeted lazily. "What can I do for you?" "Sigh." Song Shiling showed a helpless expression. "Little sister, your marriage to Lu Yulo has nothing to do with me. It's all father's decision. Don't blame me. If you have something to say it quickly. I'm tired and want to rest," Song Yuning said indifferently. Song Shiling coughed softly and braced himself to say, "Lu Yurong is here." Song Yuning frowned. Song Shiling said, "She came early to prevent the public house from messing around." "Humph, she's taking precautions. She's really a resourceful person," Song Yuning said coldly. Song Shiling said, "She's also doing this out of goodwill. If anything happens, our public house's reputation will be ruined." "I know," Song Yuning said perfunctorily. "Is there anything else?" Song Shiling scratched his head and said, embarrassedly, "She brought 2 grandmasters for you. One is a woman who can protect you. The other is Shi Wu, Elder Shi." "I'm really grateful," Song Yuning sneered. Song Shiling said, "Little sister, just bear with it. Don't lose your temper. It'll be over soon." "Oh, I can't lose my temper." Song Yuning sneered. "That's good. Just tie me up and bring me to the Ren public house." "Little sister," Song Shiling quickly said, "lower your voice." Song Yuning snorted and turned her back to him. Song Shiling sighed, helplessly. With his little sister's temper, the two of them would quarrel all day long. Song Shiling cupped his hands. "Little sister, just let me worry," he said as he opened the door and invited Xiao Ro in. Xiao Ro entered the house and curtsied. "Greetings, young madam." Song Yuning raised her hand and said lightly, "You don't have to do this. I'm not young madam yet." Grandmasters had high status. No matter which public house they were in, they would have basic respect. She knew the importance of this. "Yes," Xiao Ro agreed. "Protect her, Xiao. I don't like to be disturbed. Please guard outside the door." Song Yuning said lightly, "There's no tunnel in the house. I can't run away." Xiao Ro smiled. "Miss Song, what are you talking about? I was ordered to protect you, not to monitor you." Song Yuning waved her hand, indicating that there was no need to say more. Xiao Ro saw that she refused so firmly and knew that it was not appropriate to resist. She curtsied and left the house. Song Shiling shook his head helplessly at Song Yuning. Song Yuning stared at him coldly. Song Shiling shook his head and sighed. He turned around and followed her out and gave an apologetic fist salute to Xiao Ro. Xiao Ro smiled indifferently. Song Yuning snorted, "Xiao Yi, I'm hungry. Go to the kitchen and get some snacks." "Yes, miss," the maid Xiao Yi replied. She went out of the boudoir and saw 6 people standing outside. Xiao Ro, 4 grandmasters from the public house, and an old man. He must be a grandmaster from the Ren public house. She secretly shook her head. When she went to the kitchen and picked up 2 plates of snacks, her body suddenly froze and could not move. Chapter 231. If I didn't work hard, I would feel that I wouldn't be in the right to ask for monthly votes. Now, I can finally ask for monthly votes loudly. However, it seems that it's too late now. Others have already sent out their leaflets to ask for monthly votes and collect everyone's votes first. Now that I'm asking for monthly votes, everyone has already run out of votes. I seem to be too foolish and naive. However, no matter what, I still have to thank everyone. I'm thankful for every monthly vote. It's because of everyone's monthly votes that I have the total number of monthly votes I have now, allowing me to be ranked on the new book monthly votes list. Even if everyone has run out of monthly votes, in order to express my gratitude, I will still work hard to update and write with all my might. I will strive for 6 chapters tomorrow. At the beginning of the month, I even managed to do 9 chapters a day, but it was indeed harmful to my body. I continued to work hard for another month, asking for monthly votes every day, working hard every day. I was already exhausted, like an arrow at the end of its flight. Even if I worked hard, I could only manage 6 chapters. After working hard for a month, the situation suddenly changed in one day, and I was left behind. I felt very depressed and uncomfortable, but it was also very exciting. This is the monthly votes list. Monthly votes are fought for. Even if you can't win against others, you have to dare to fight for it. Even if your novels are not good enough and the results are not satisfactory, you have to work hard and not give up because of this. There are still 2 more days, the last 2 days of the month. You can't relax at the last breath. No matter how tired you are, you have to persevere. Monthly votes are the best motivation. If you still have monthly votes, then vote for me. Let's see if you can move forward and fight for it. Thank you for your support. Chapter 232. She was so scared that she wanted to scream, but she couldn't, other than his eyes. He couldn't move a muscle. He desperately looked behind him, to the point where his eyeballs hurt, but he still couldn't see anyone. Li was amused as he looked at this lively little girl. He stood in front of her and said softly, "Excuse me, I'm Li." Xiao Yi's eyes widened as she looked at the valiant youth in front of her. The lady was very concerned about everything in the public house. She had collected a lot of information about the public house. As a personal maid, of course, she knew about Li. He was the most threatening master in the public house. His light body technique was godly, and it was impossible to guard against him. The High Duke and the heir to the High Duke were very afraid of him. Young Master Xiao still has a conscience. He really sent people over. She couldn't help but feel happy, for Mississippi Miss didn't choose the wrong person. Li stuffed the waist tag and the 2 letters into her hands. He said in a low voice, "Pass them to Lady Co secretly. Let her act according to what's written in the letters. Don't worry about the rest." Li smiled at her and patted her shoulder gently. Then he disappeared. Little E widened her eyes and hurriedly put away the waist token and the letter. After thinking for a while, she picked up the snacks and walked out of the kitchen as if nothing had happened and returned to her boudoir. "Why are you so slow?" Song Yuning glared at her. Xiao Yi looked outside the door and said, "Miss, the kitchen has just made it. Do you want to make more?" "No, these are enough." Song Yuning frowned when she saw her looking out the door. Xiao Yi took out a white jade waist tag and handed it to Song Yuning. Song Yuning took it, touched it, and looked at it. Suddenly, her eyes widened in shock. Xiao Yi put her index finger in front of her lips and took out 2 letters while saying, "Miss, I also want to eat a piece." "Eat, eat, eat. You're stuffed to death." Song Yuning snorted and took the 2 letters calmly. She caressed the white jade waist tag, as if she was caressing Co Taiying. Her beautiful cheeks flushed red, and her eyes sparkled like oil. After a long while, she ate a pastry and slowly opened the letter. First, it was Co Taiying's letter. There were only a few words in the letter, asking her to listen to Li's instructions. She studied the letter carefully. looking at Co Taiying's forceful words. It was as if he could see himself. These few words were stained with his aura. It was exceptionally different, no matter how much he looked at it. He could not get enough of it. Xiao Yi looked at the young Mrs. Infatuated look. Shaking his head helplessly, he picked up a piece of dessert and started eating. After a while, Song Yuning opened the second letter. It was written by another person, and it was signed by Chu Li. She looked up at Xiao Yi, and Xiao Yi nodded. Song Yuning put away the 2 letters and the waist tag. She thought for a moment and said, "Xiao Yi, I want to digest my food after I've had some snacks. Let's go to the backyard." "Yes," Little Yi answered. The 2 of them left the boudoir, and the 6 grandmasters outside hurriedly followed them, surrounding her in the middle. Song Yuning snorted discontentedly. "I'm in my own home, not outside. Why are you blocking the door so tightly?" "Miss, it's best to be careful," an old man advised in a gentle voice. Song Yuning snorted and stopped talking. By the time they arrived at the back garden, the sun was already setting and the sky was filled with rays of sunlight. She sat by the man-made lake, looking at the golden clouds in the sky. She did not know if Chu Li could take her away. With 6 grandmasters watching her at all times, how could she slip away so easily? If she really left, would the consequences be severe? If she failed, what would happen? Co Taiying's smiling face appeared in her mind again, and her chaotic thoughts gradually calmed down. As long as she could be with Brother Co, she did not care about anything else. Thinking of this, she felt refreshed. Her spirits were lifted. When the lanterns were first lit, she turned around and walked back. Xiao Yi hurriedly followed. The 6 grandmasters continued to surround her, not leaving her for even a moment. When she returned to her boudoir, she glanced at the treasure sword hanging on the wall and took it down. She sat in front of the dressing table and opened a box. There was a letter inside. She opened the letter and read it, pursing her lips into a smile. The letter claimed that he was the sword master of the Golden Summit Palace of Mount Ferong. He saw that Miss Song had excellent qualifications and was the best disciple to cultivate the martial arts of the Golden Summit Palace. So he took her away. Father and brother did not have to worry about her. She would naturally return after 10 years. She shook her head and laughed. This Chu Li was really good at making things up. He could even think of such a thing. She got up and walked away. She looked at the corner and found a few long swords. They were covered by curtains and deeply inserted into the ground. Xiao Yi's bright eyes looked around. She faintly felt that someone had been here. Song Yuning picked up the treasure sword and slowly pulled it out of the scabbard. There was a white mark on the doorstep. It was drawn by Chu Li in advance. She placed the tip of the sword on the white mark and then forcefully inserted it. The surroundings seemed to tremble. The air was like a lake that swayed for a moment. She turned her head and looked around. There was nothing strange. She looked at Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi also shook her head. "Pack up, quickly," Song Yuning whispered. Xiao Yi nodded excitedly. She quickly packed up a bag and followed Song Yuning to open the door. The door was wide open, but the 6 grandmasters did not surround him like before. It was as if they did not hear the sound of the door opening. They maintained their posture. Some were deep in thought, some were resting with their eyes closed, and some were reading. She softened her steps and tiptoed out. Xiao Yi followed closely. The 2 of them walked a few steps and looked back. The 6 grandmasters were still focused on themselves and did not respond. They felt that it was strange. However, the letter had already mentioned this situation. They quickly walked out. When they went downstairs, they saw Chu Li. Chu Li was wearing a green robe. He stood in the twilight. He smiled and closed fist saluted. "Madam, let's go." "Are you Chu Li?" Song Yuning asked. Chu Li smiled. Yes, they they are trapped in a formation. They will wake up in a quarter of an hour. We have to move as soon as possible. Chu Li said. Song Yuning quickly said, "Let's go." Chu Li reached out and grabbed their waists. "Excuse me." After he said that, his body swayed. The two women only saw light and shadow flashing in front of them. It was so fast that they could not see clearly. They only vaguely saw that they left the house of Haiduk. They passed by the town and went out of the town. They ran along a small path. Unknowingly, a bright moon hung in the night sky. Chu Li was silent and ran all the way. In the middle of the night, they entered a small town. Chu Li used his inner energy to block in front of them and isolated the wind. They felt comfortable and excited. They were so excited that their eyes widened. Chu Li suddenly stopped. The two women realized that they were in the town. The three of them came to a wine shop. Chu Li bought a large jar of liquor from the shopkeeper and then asked for a room. Money makes the world go round. Under the temptation of silver, the shopkeeper happily agreed. "Madam, Miss Xiaoyi, you two go into the jar and soak for a while. After you come out, change your clothes. You don't need the original ones." Chu Li said. Xiaoyi was surprised. "Why?" "To prevent you from having any smell on you that can be tracked." "No way." Xiaoyi cried. Chu Li smiled. Song Yuning said, "Do as Chu Li said." She looked at Chu Li. He was indeed Chu Li, a man who could confront Lu Yurong head-on. His thinking was meticulous. Chu Li left the room and stood outside, thinking about Lu Yurong. He had been staying in the Huai public house for the past 2 days. Without anyone knowing, he saw Lu Yurong coming. Originally, he wanted to see through Lu Yurong's thoughts through the omniscient mirror. He did not expect Lu Yurong to have a special skill like Shao Qi, but it was better than Shao Qi's. It could isolate his prying. Chapter 233. Lu Yurong was eating at the stone table in the courtyard. She took off her white veil, revealing her peerlessly beautiful face. She frowned and looked at the dishes on the table thoughtfully. As an honored guest, her dishes were exquisite and delicious. Under the light, she looked even more beautiful. It was as if her body was glowing, and no one dared to look at her directly. The maid holding the white cat whispered, "Miss, I'm feeling uneasy. Something bad is going to happen." Lu Yurong frowned. "Xiao Huan, ask Aunt Xiao to come over." "Yes," Xiao Huan answered in a low voice. She carried the white cat and walked out of the courtyard. She gave a few orders at the entrance of the courtyard, and a guard went to pass on the message. Lu Yurong put down her silver chopsticks, got up, and walked gracefully like a willow. Xiao Huan looked at her with the white cat in her arms. Lu Yurong took a few deep breaths and tried to calm the surging lake in her heart. After a while, Xiao Ro floated over with a gloomy expression. "Ani Xiao, what's wrong?" Lu Yurong knew something was wrong from the look on her face. Xiao Ro said, "Miss Song is missing." "Huh." Lu Yurong's expression changed. She turned around and walked out. Even so, she did not lose her composure and put on the white veil. Xiao Ro led the way, and they arrived at Song Yuning's boudoir. Several guards were already standing downstairs, their faces solemn. She went upstairs and entered her boudoir. Song Shiling was also there. "Brother Song," Lu Yurong said in a low voice. Song Shiling passed a letter to Lu Yurong. "Take a look. Sister is very knowledgeable. Do you know who this Golden Summit Palace is?" Lu Yurong opened the letter and frowned. "Golden Summit Palace? Never heard of it. They're too overbearing. They took our people away without saying a word. They're treating our public house like nothing." Song Shiling's face was gloomy. He gritted his teeth fiercely. "We must demand an explanation." "Aunt Xiao," Lu Yurong turned to look at Xiao Rou. Xiao Rou said, "We are also baffled. Ever since Miss Song entered the room, there was nothing unusual. If Xiao Gongye did not come, we would not have noticed." Song Shirling spread his hands and said, "I felt something was wrong the moment I entered. There was no one in the house." Sister Lu, could it be Chu Li? No matter how good his light body technique is, do you think he can sneak away from 6 grandmasters while carrying 2 people? Lu Yurong scoffed. Song Shirling sighed. "It's impossible." Lu Yurong walked around the room and saw the scabbard on the dresser. "Where's the sword? Did little sister fight with them?" Song Shirling hurriedly asked. Lu Yurong shook her head. If they really fought, how could Xiao Rou and the others not hear it? The few swords that Chu Li had stabbed into the ground earlier had already crumbled into dust, not attracting attention. To be able to turn swords into dust, the power of the void controlled by the formation was clearly very powerful. Lu Yurong turned around and did not find anything. She turned around and left. She returned to the small courtyard, and Xiao Rou and Shi Wu followed her. Golden Summit Palace. Shi Wu pondered along the way. Lu Yurong sat by the stone table. He snorted coldly and said, "It's Chu." "It's really him?" Xiao Rou was surprised. Lu Yurong sneered. "He can fool others, but he can't fool me. Xiao Huan, let Xiao Bai lead the way. We'll chase after him." "Yes," Xiao Huan answered in a sweet voice. She put the white cat on the ground and rubbed its chin. The white cat mooed twice. It did not sound like a cat. It was a kind of strange beast. It turned into a white light and leaped forward. The 4 people hurriedly followed. They left the house of High Duke and chased after Chu Li to the wine shop. They saw Song Yuning and Xiao Yi taking off their clothes. Lu Yurong's face was covered by a white veil, and her expression could not be seen. Xiao Rou and the others breathed lightly, feeling her anger. "My lady, why don't we go to Chongming Town to stop him?" Shi Wu whispered. Lu Yurong said coldly, "It's useless." She turned to look at the 2 people. What method did he use to get the 2 of them away? Shi Wu and Xiao Rou both frowned. This was also what troubled them. It was impossible, no matter how they thought about it. They were not alone. There were 4 other people. It was definitely not due to carelessness. What a Chu! Lu Yurong snorted. "Let's say that Golden Summit Palace took them away. This debt must be settled in secret. Watch your mouths. Don't tell anyone, especially not to Big Brother." "Do we have to hide it from Master Xiao Taiying?" Shi Wu said. Lu Yurong said, "If outsiders know, Ren Public House will become a joke. Big Brother will know. They will definitely fight to the death with the Public House. Anyone can guess the truth." "Yes." Xiao Huan and the other 2 quickly nodded. This kind of thing was indeed a great shame. If Master Xiao Taiying knew, no matter how wise he was and how he looked at the big picture, he would not be able to stand it. The Public House was weak, but if they really went to war, in the end, both sides would suffer, and no one would benefit. Not to mention that Public House was about to have a marriage alliance with Prince An's imperial residence. "My lady, if we can ruin Prince An's wedding, it can be considered as revenge," Shi Wu said. Xiao Taiying took Sister Song Yuning away. "Big Brother will take back Xiao sure." Lu Yurong said coldly. Shi Wu laughed. "This is a good idea. Second Lady Xiao is the first beauty of the great Ji dynasty. If Master Xiao Taiying gets her, it will be even better." Xiao Rou said, "My lady, what about Huai Public House? Postpone the wedding first. After we take back Xiao sure, we will have a showdown with them. They probably know what to do." Lu Yurong scoffed. "Let's go." Chu Li brought the 2 girls and traveled day and night. They entered public house in the middle of the night and went straight to his island. The island was already built, and the formation was set up. He did not want to leave Jade, Island Guardian, so he did not move there. This time, he settled Song Yuning and Xiao Yi here. The formation was shrouded, and no one could enter. He put the two girls in the main hall and smiled. This island was originally given to me. I have never lived here before. You two stay here and rest. I want to see Brother Seo. Song Yuning said, Chu Li, thank you for your hard work. Chu Li smiled. I will inform Master Xiao immediately. I will repay your kindness in the future. Song Yuning smiled sweetly. Chu Li closed fist saluted and left. He arrived at Iron Eagle Island. Seo Taiying was reading a document in the main hall. When he heard the news, he quickly put down the document and walked to Chu Li. Chu Li said, Master Xiao Taiying, please follow me. Is it done? Seo Taiying looked at him nervously. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Seo Taiying trembled with excitement. Good, good. Chu Li led the way in front, and Seo Taiying followed, closely behind. The two stepped on the small boat and floated away. Lin Quan did not follow. Master, let Miss Song stay with me first. If she is bored and wants to go out, she can wear a veil, and no one will recognize her. Chu Li stood against the wind, and his green robe fluttered. If she leaves the public house, I will be her protector. Seo Taiying quickly nodded. I really need to trouble you to be her protector. He knew Chu Li's ability. He could see through people's hearts and was very sensitive to hostility and danger. If Song Yuning left the public house, he would have to guard against Ren Public House and Huai Public House. With Chu Li, he could only be at ease. This is my duty. Chu Li smiled. The small boat approached the island. Seo Taiying's body was tense and his steps were stiff. He looked very strange. Chu Li smiled secretly. Master Xiao Taiying had deep feelings for Song Yuning. Master, I want to return to Huai Public House immediately. Chu Li stepped on the shore and said, Let's see Lu Yurong's reaction and be prepared in advance. Okay. Seo Taiying tried to calm himself down. He did not want to be overwhelmed by excitement. This is the way to enter the island. Chu Li took out a piece of paper from his sleeve and handed it to Seo Taiying. He stepped on the small boat again and floated away. Chapter 234. Huai Public House Song. Ling sat in the armchair and played with a white jade pendant. He casually raised his head and glanced at the old man standing in front of him. The old man was thin and didn't know any martial arts. He stood there quietly, exuding a scholarly aura. He looked at Song Ling calmly. Little High Duke, I have never known about the existence of the Golden Summit Palace. Song Ling said lightly, There are as many martial arts sects in the world as there are hairs on an ox. It's not like there aren't any. The old man shook his head. To be able to take away the lady and the maid under the noses of 6 grandmasters, he's definitely not an ordinary master. With such a master, this Golden Summit Palace is definitely not an ordinary faction. It might be some hidden sects that aren't known to ordinary people, Song Ling said. The old man still shook his head. No matter how secluded a sect is, its name will still spread. It's just that it doesn't send its disciples into the world, or its disciples enter the world to hide their identities. Old Pan. Song Ling kept the white jade pendant and scoffed. Then what do you mean? I'm afraid it's nothing, Old Pan said calmly. Song Ling glared at him. Don't talk nonsense. Heir to the High Duke. Don't you find it strange? Elder Pan smiled. I don't think so. Song Ling snorted. Elder Pan said, I'm afraid it's not the Golden Summit Palace, but someone else. Who? Song Ling said snappily, Don't tell me you want to say that his surname is Chu. He's definitely one of the best in light body technique in the world, and with his status, Elder Pan stroked his beard and shook his head. In my opinion, it's most likely. Enough. I don't want to listen to you. Guy, he asked about the harsh duties. Old Pan smiled. Heir to the High Duke, what if it's really him? Song Shirling's face darkened. It's really him. I definitely won't let him off. Young mistress is in their hands. She can't do anything about it. Old Pan sighed. Song Shirling gritted his teeth and slammed the armrest of his chair. This move is steady, accurate, and ruthless. According to my research, it fits Chu Li's way of doing things. Elder Pan sighed. Only he has the guts and capability to plot against the eldest lady of the Lu residence this time. All right. You really admire that Chu Li. Song Shirling said snappily. Why don't you go and help him? Elder Pan chuckled and cupped his fists. I'll take my leave then. Excuse me? Say it. If it's really him, what should we do? Song Shirling's eyes widened. We can't just kill our way in, right? Our reputation, and the Rin public house's reputation, would be tarnished. Once this matter was stirred up, the whole world would know about it. The Rin public house had no choice but to fight. Old Yuan stroked his white beard. He remained silent. Hurry up and say it. Song Shirling urged, Don't keep me in suspense. Heir to the High Duke, have you ever thought about what would happen if we were to form a marriage alliance with the Yi public house? Lu Yurong will definitely kill me. He. Elder Pan stroked his beard and smiled. That's not up to her. If the Yi public house has a marriage alliance with us, and then with King, and would the Ren public house dare to mess around? Song Shirling was startled and touched his chin. We have a marriage alliance with the Ren public house, and the Yi public house has a marriage alliance with King, and we'll still be in a stalemate, Elder Pan said. But if we were to form a marriage alliance with the Yi public house, Lu Yurong is not to be trifled with. Song Shirling shook his head. Then we'll really become enemies. Elder Pan said, Then don't admit it publicly. You're really cunning. Song Shirling pointed at him. You don't have any morals at all. You're turning your back on us. Elder Pan smiled. The High Duke and High Duke Seo are good friends. A marriage alliance between children is also a wonderful thing. Moreover, the heir to the High Duke Seo is a magnanimous gentleman. He has deep feelings for the lady. Otherwise, he would not have done such a thing. Well said. Chu Li suddenly appeared in the hall and cupped his fists. Elder Pan, well said. Chu Li. Song Shirling gritted his teeth and glared at him. How dare you come back? Chu Li smiled. Heir to the High Duke, how have you been? You did it, right? Song Shirling scoffed. Chu Li nodded. I was ordered by Master to take the lady away. The lady? Song Shirling scoffed angrily. Without the orders of their parents, they are not a couple. I'm here to report that the lady has safely arrived at the public house. Please don't worry. High Duke and heir to the High Duke. Chu Li smiled. Lu Yurong must know it's me, but she won't say it. She has to care about the Rin public house's reputation. Seo Tying has really gone mad. How could he do such a thing? Song Shirling sneered. Does he really dare to start a war with the Rin public house? Chu Li said, The lady has arrived at the public house. I'll come over to deal with the aftermath. How to deal with the aftermath? Song Shirling said coldly. Heir to the High Duke, if you snatch the lady back and marry her into the Rin public house, how will the lady live in the future? Chu Li smiled. Not to mention that she loves Master Seo. Would the heir to the High Duke Lu bear no grudges? Song Shirling's face was cold, and he did not say a word. Chu Li said, Snatch the lady back and marry her into the Rin public house. Although the relationship between the two families will be preserved, The lady will be sacrificed. So, we can only make the best of the mistake. Song Shiling sneered. Chu Li smiled. As the elder brother, to be able to let the younger sister marry a good man and live a happy life, is this not an achievement? Moreover, it's a marriage with the Ren public house and the public house. What's the difference? Chu Li did not wait for him to speak and said, "Yes, we are weak now, but that may not be the case in the future. I think the heir to the High Duke is clear about this." "You guys are too dishonest," Song Shiling scoffed. Chu Li nodded. "We had no other choice but to do this. I hope the heir to the High Duke can forgive us." "What message does the heir to the lady have?" Elder Pan said. "Heir to the High Duke, what's done is done. Why add more variables? Let it be for now." Song Shiling glared at Elder Pan and stared at Chu Li. "Humph, you go back and tell Co. Tying that if he bullies my sister, I'll settle the score with him." "Yes, I'll pass this message to Master Co. Tying." Chu Li closed fist saluted. "Where's the lady?" "Humph, let her stay in the public house and avoid the limelight. Don't let the people from the Ren public house find out." Song Shiling sighed. "Don't be willful. It's not like at home." Chu Li smiled. "Heir to the High Duke, don't worry. I won't let the lady be wronged. I'll bring the lady back to the public house for a visit in a few days." "I hope so." Song Shiling waved his hand and sighed. "Hurry up and get lost. Don't worry, we won't snatch her away. Tell her not to rush back." He understood the intention of Chu Li coming over to say this. It was nothing more than to let the Hawaii public house stop and not cause any more trouble. It would put the Ren public house on the spot and really force them to turn hostile and start a war. Chu Li sighed. This heir to the High Duke looked rough, but he was also very smart. He could see things clearly. He closed fist saluted and smiled. "Then I'll take my leave. I'll come back later to ask for forgiveness." He glided away. Watching Chu Li disappear, Elder Pan turned around and gave him a thumbs up. "Heir to the High Duke is open-minded and has great tolerance. I admire you. Get lost." Song Shiling waved his hand. "Get lost? I don't want to see your old face." Elder Pan chuckled, closed fist saluted, and left. Song Shiling lifted a table and fiercely smashed it on the ground. He was still panting heavily after smashing another table. He lifted all the tables in the hall and smashed them fiercely. Looking at the broken pieces on the ground, he felt slightly better. Chapter 235. P.S. At this moment, every monthly vote is crucial. It's the time when support is needed the most. Although Song Yuning had a bad temper, she was very smart. When it was time to lose her temper, she would lose her temper. When it was not time to lose her temper, she would be able to restrain herself. She was very affectionate towards Xiao Taiying. To Chu Li's surprise, Song Yuning did not like to go shopping. She preferred to stay on the island, either planting flowers, doing embroidery, or cooking delicious food. When she was bored, she would go boating on the lake. She liked the lake very much. When Chu Li came to visit Co. Taiying's face was flushed with success, and his eyes were gentle. "Master Xiao Taiying, has there been any news from the third lady?" Chu Li fist saluted and asked. Co. Taiying shook his head. "Not yet. I don't know what's going on." Chu Li frowned. Logically speaking, they should have arrived at the Snow Lunar Pavilion a long time ago. Why did they not send a letter back to report that they were safe? Co. Taiying said. Maybe it's for the sake of being careful. That's why they sent the letter. Chu Li nodded slowly. Once Xiao Qi and the others' identities were exposed, they would become the target of public criticism. More importantly, Snow Lunar Pavilion would also become the public enemy of the martial arts world. The consequences would be dire. Even as strong as the Tempest Temple was, they could not act alone in the martial arts world and become enemies with the martial arts world. The people of the martial arts world were very hot-blooded. Most of them were not afraid of death. Once they became enemies, even if there were many masters, they would fight to the death. If they could not kill the masters, they would kill the weaker ones. The unlucky ones were the low-level disciples. Low-level disciples were the soil for future experts, the blood of a sect. The one who died might become a top-notch expert in the future. Little sister is smart. She'll be fine. Co. Taiying said, I'm worried about my second sister. Chu Li understood what he meant. This time, the Rim public house had to swallow their anger. They were not going to swallow their anger. They would definitely retaliate. The second lady must never leave the public house. Chu Li said, Master Xiao Taiying stole lady song. Lu Yushu will steal the second lady. Sigh. Co. Taiying sighed. Come to think of it, it was all his fault. Is there any other way? Co. Taiying asked. This matter can only be discussed with you, in case the news leaks out. Chu Li said, If all else fails, I'll bring the second lady to Fairy's capital in secret. I think so too. Co. Taiying stood up and paced around with his hands behind his back. Go there in advance. It would be best to settle them in the imperial residence of King, and it would be foolproof. He looked excited, thinking that this was a wonderful idea. Chu Li was stunned. He said, the imperial residence of King and might not be safe either. I want to find a random place and cut off all contact with the imperial residence until the day of my marriage. We'll meet again at the divine capital. That's a good idea. Co. Taiying nodded slowly. The world was so big that it was impossible for the Ren public house to search everywhere. If Chu Li and the second younger sister randomly found a place to stay, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. With Chu Li's intelligence, it was impossible for him to be found. How about this? You leave a month earlier, Co. Taiying said. She still has a lot of things to learn so that she won't become a laughingstock when she enters the imperial residence. Chu Li nodded. When he returned to the Gloriesville courtyard, Xueling had already prepared a meal and was waiting for him. After washing his hands with Xueling's help, he sat at the table. Xueling handed over a thick stack of papers. Master, all the information about the Snow Lunar Pavilion is here. There's information about the Leisure Cloud Pub and the New Moon Brothel. All the sisters in the New Moon Brothel have started practicing the Eternal Spring technique. Chu Li took it and quickly flipped through it. Xueling said, Master, I think it's still not enough to rely on the New Moon Brothel and the Leisure Cloud Pub. The information is too messy. They're just supplementary. Chu Li shook his head. The information of the House of High Dukes is lacking in this area. Xueling suddenly understood. Everything she did was under Chu Li's orders. She did everything possible to win over the hearts of the people in the New Moon Brothel, so that they could become the source of information. Chu Li disliked the House of High Dukes' information sources. The protectors and spies were slow to react to the outside world. Chu Li was now in charge of the spies in the House of High Dukes. He deeply felt the mediocrity of these spies. If he wanted more information, he would need more spies. If he wanted to develop spies, he would need enough information. Twice the result, with half the effort. Without the support of information, it would be extremely difficult to develop spies. Master, I think something is wrong with Miss Minglu. Xueling frowned. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? I can't tell. In short, she's a little strange. Xueling shook her head. Master, I'm worried that she might be someone else's spy. It's okay. Chu Li said, don't do anything. Just pay attention to what she says. I'll meet her when I have time. Yes, Xueling smiled. Or maybe it's just my imagination. Chu Li smiled. He used the tiger illustration to slowly strengthen Xue Ling's spirit. Her senses were sharper than others. If she said something was wrong, there might be a problem. Master, do you have time tonight? Xue Ling smiled. Do you want to go to the New Moon brothel tonight? Sister Zhaoxia will be singing tonight. Tonight. Chu Li thought for a while and nodded. He was restless today. He had already learned everything in the formation book. There was nothing else he could learn. If he wanted to improve, he would have to read other formation books. The two of them came out of the New Moon brothel at night and walked on the bustling street. The lanterns lit up the street as if it was daytime. There was an endless stream of people coming and going. It was livelier than during the day. Chu Li said, "This Ming Lu is from the Ren Public House. There's a problem." Xue Ling clapped her hands. Chu Li said, "Don't worry about her. Master wants to use her. It's not a big deal to leave her here." Chu Li shook his head. "It's not worth it to pull her out. I understand." Xue Ling smiled. "Why don't I turn her around? I'll give her a nightmare flower. I don't believe she won't submit. Don't mess around." Chu Li waved his hand. "The nightmare flower is a disaster for them." "All right." Xue Ling nodded helplessly. "But, Master, you should come here more often. It's so lively." Chu Li smiled. The ladies of the New Moon brothel were beautiful. They each had their own temperament, but he did not like them. When he first left the temple and entered the public house, he was ambitious. He wanted to have all the beauties in the world. He wanted to have all the beauties in the world. Now, he changed his mind. He only wanted Xiaoqi. Once he had her, he would feel like he had all the beauties in the world. Now that he saw other beauties, he liked them too. However, it was only admiration and fondness. There was no strong impulse or desire. He was a rational and calm person. He analyzed his own situation. This was the normal reaction of a man in love. Maybe after a while, he would still want all the beauties in the world. When the two of them arrived at the entrance of the public house, someone suddenly came to greet them. Lin Quan closed fist saluted. "Chief Chu, Master Xiao Taiying wants to see you." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He signaled Xue Ling to go back by herself. He followed Lin Quan to Xiao Taiying. Xiao Taiying stood up and gestured for him to sit down. He handed over a letter. Sister finally wrote. Chu Li took the letter. It was Suru's handwriting. She did not say anything else in the letter. She only said that everything was fine and that the family did not need to worry about her. She would take good care of herself. Chu Li frowned as he looked at the letter. He wanted to read between the lines. "Looks like things are going well." Xiao Taiying smiled. "That's good. The snow lunar pavilion is not peaceful." Chu Li sighed. "You're still afraid that sister will be taken advantage of?" Xiao Taiying laughed. Chu Li nodded. "I know how powerful Lady Xiao is. She won't be taken advantage of. I want to continue studying formations. Unfortunately, I've already read all the books in the public house. I'll think of a way to collect more. It's rare to find books on formations." "Master, I want to go out for a walk. I want to see the world. How long will you be gone for?" "I won't delay second lady's business." "All right." Xiao Taiying nodded slowly. Now that the public house had set up a formation, they did not lack masters like him. It would be good to go out for a walk. Chapter 236. After Chu Li left the High Duke's public house, his appearance changed. He turned into a young man in his 30s. He looked steady and mature, heroic and heroic. At first glance, one could tell that he was a hero in the martial arts world. At his waist was not the modesty sword, but a long saber. 10 days later, at noon, He arrived at the foot of the mountain where the snow lunar pavilion was located under the sun. This was a precipitous and majestic mountain peak. It was verdant and lush, like a green sword stabbed into the ground. The mountain peak was like the tip of the sword pointing to the sky, and the peak was covered by clouds and mist. There was only one path up the mountain, and it was difficult and dangerous. Only martial arts masters could climb it. Chu Scatter had removed his inner force, and his martial arts was at the innate realm. He disguised himself as a travel-worn Jianghu hero. For someone of his age to have such a cultivation level, he was already considered an elite in the Jianghu world. In the martial arts world, the number of people who had reached the Grandmaster's boundary at a young age could be counted on one's fingers. It would be easy to find out with just one investigation. Being too eye-catching would not be a good thing for him. He rode to the foot of the mountain and saw a small pavilion hidden in the woods. 2 old men were playing chess in the gazebo. They looked very similar. One was thin and the other was fat. They seemed to be brothers. The 2 of them didn't seem to hear the sound of the horses' hooves as they concentrated on playing chess. Chu Li got off his horse and came to the gazebo. He closed fist, saluted, and said in a deep voice, "Seniors, is this the snow lunar pavilion?" The 2 old men lazily raised their heads and sized him up. The plump old man laughed. He only had a few teeth left. He chuckled and said, "Young man, are you going to the snow lunar pavilion?" "That's right," Chu Li replied. "Tell me your name. What business do you have with the snow lunar pavilion?" "I'm Du Feng. My sister, Du Qiu, has joined the snow lunar pavilion. I'm here to visit." "Du Qiu?" The thin old man next to him said, "That little girl who just entered the sect not long ago, right? My sister used to be cultivating on her own at home. She's a registered disciple. Not long ago, she was accepted as a disciple by her master and brought to the snow lunar pavilion." "Oh, it's her. Let me ask." The fat old man nodded. He picked up the brush and wrote a few words, then rolled it up and put it into a bamboo tube. Then he pursed his lips and let out a long whistle. The whistle was clear and resounding, piercing through the clouds. A moment later, a long cry came from the sky. Chu Li looked up. A golden eagle swooped down. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a giant eagle that was as tall as a human. When it spread its wings, it was about 4 to 5 meters long. The golden eagle was extremely lethal. Its 2 claws could break a stone tablet, and its peck could pierce through a human skull. Ordinary post-liminary realm experts were not its match. It swooped down with a gust of wind, flapping its wide and long wings, and landed on a pine tree in front of the gazebo. The pine tree bent, almost bending. The fat old man leaped onto the treetop, lightly, and tied the bamboo tube to his eagle claw. The golden eagle flapped its long and wide wings, stirring up a gale. Then it soared into the sky and turned into a small black that, in the blink of an eye, disappearing into the sky. Chu Li sighed in admiration. Raising a golden eagle was not a bad idea. He was a little envious and had the idea of raising an eagle. "You and Miss Du Qiu are biological siblings." "They're cousins." "Oh, no wonder." They asked because they saw Chu Li's appearance. After a while, the golden eagle let out a long cry in the sky. "All right, you can go up the mountain now." The 2 old men waved their hands. Chu Li fist saluted and left the gazebo. He followed the small path up the mountain. The small path became steeper and steeper. In the end, it was almost straight up and down. He had to use both his hands and feet. Those martial artists with weaker cultivation level could not handle it. He was like a nimble ape as he ascended without stopping. When he was halfway up the mountain, his eyes suddenly opened up and a wide valley came into view. He looked into the valley from the mouth of the valley. The valley was covered in green grass. In the middle of the valley was a round lake. It was like a huge mirror on the ground, reflecting the blue sky and white clouds. On the clear lake, there was a waterside pavilion with a winding wooden bridge leading to a secluded place. Around the valley, there were continuous pavilions built on the steep stone walls. The eaves were high in the sky, and the beams were richly decorated. It was a fascinating place, like a celestial being's residence. Chu Li was amazed. Snow Lunar Pavilion was indeed a famous place in the martial arts world. There was a gazebo at the mouth of the valley. A man in green was practicing his swordsmanship. When he saw Chu Li, he put away his sword and greeted him with fist salutes. "Are you young hero Du?" Chu Li smiled and fist saluted. "Du Feng is here to visit. Young hero Du, please follow me." The man in green looked at the long blade at Chu Li's waist and fist saluted with a smile. He walked out of the gazebo and led the way. Chu Li sized up the man in green. He was an innate master. He was smart and experienced. "Sister Du lives in the waterside pavilion. Let's go." The man in green said, "I'm Shunbai." "Brother Shun, thank you," Chu Li said. The two entered the valley and stepped on the thick and soft grass. The valley was warm like spring. Flowers were in full bloom. There were flowers everywhere in the valley. Chu Li did not rush to activate the omniscient mirror. He did not want to be discovered by a master. The two quickly stepped on the wooden bridge and path on the lake. Chu Li's senses were sharp. He realized that the lake was warmer. The lake water was warm. Shun Bai brought Chu Li into a waterside pavilion. This waterside pavilion was surrounded by white gauze curtains. When a gust of wind blew, the curtains fluttered. It was like a dream. Shun Bai knocked on the door and said softly, "Sister Du, you have a guest." "Brother Shun, who is it?" Su Ru's voice came from inside. Chu Li said in a deep voice, "It's me." Su Ru knew it was Chu Li. She was surprised. "Come in." Shun Bai pushed the door and entered. The smell of herbs hit him in the face. Chu Li frowned. He saw Su Ru with a white gauze covering her face. Su Ru saw Chu Li. She was surprised. She said lightly, "Why are you here?" Chu Li said, "Sister, I was just passing by. I came to see what happened. Are you hurt?" Su Ru scoffed. She went into the bedroom and sat on the bed. Shun Bai closed fist saluted and smiled. "You two can chat. I won't disturb you." "Thank you, Brother Shun," Su Ru said. Shun Bai smiled and shook his head. After he left, there were only the two of them. Chu Li looked around the house. The decoration was simple. It was elegant and pleasant. "How did your face become like this?" "Bone shrinking skill." Chu Li frowned. "What happened to your face?" Su Ru touched her cheek and sighed. "I'm hurt." "Who did it?" Chu Li scoffed. Su Ru said lazily, "Green Hill. You just entered the faction. Why did you fight with someone?" Chu Li sat on the garden stool. "Where's Du Xia?" "Du Feng, Du Xia, Du Qiu." Before the two girls left, they changed their original names. Chu Li was Du Feng. He was the elder brother. Du Xia was the elder sister. Du Qiu was the younger sister. When they left the public house, they would call each other this way. With such a fake identity, no one would think that it was enough to hide their identity. Second sister is in isolated cultivation. Su Ru said, "Master is in isolated cultivation to heal. Second sister is with him, understanding the Grandmaster." Chu Li asked, "Is your master a man or a woman?" "Humph, of course it's a woman." "I'm afraid there will be scars on her face." "I know." Su Ru slammed the bed. She gritted her teeth. "Feng Xiaohua." Chu Li was surprised. "Feng Xiaohua did it." Chapter 237. P.S. Finally, there's a leader. I'm overjoyed. The leader is a gentle bandit. Chu Li recognized Feng Xiaohua. He met him the last time he saved the Tai Hua Valley disciple. This person was vicious and difficult to deal with. Feng Xiaohua wanted to kill you. Chu Li said, "Don't tell me everything I ask. I just entered the faction, but my cultivation level is still here. Master was injured and needed a spirit medicine to heal. Sister Mo brought me to Whitebone Mountain to ask for spirit medicine, and we met Feng Xiaohua on the way." Su Ru gritted her teeth and said hatefully, "Feng Xiaohua's martial arts is powerful. Sister Mo sacrificed herself to protect me, but she was killed by him. If Sister Su didn't come when she saw the distress signal, you'd be looking at my corpse now." "You didn't use the spirit blessing pill?" Chu Li asked. "It was a matter of life and death. Don't tell me I didn't use it." Su Ru said impatiently, "Sister Mo died to save me. Should I just watch her die?" Chu Li sighed. He really had to use it. The Green Hill and Snow Lunar Pavilion are enemies. They kill each other the moment they meet. You have too little experience in killing. You need more training. You shouldn't have come out of the clouds. Chu Li shook his head. In the High Duke's public house, she was the chief of the Jade Guardian Island and Xiao Qi's personal maid. Although her rank was not high, she was a rank 7 official in front of the Prime Minister. There were many people who fawned over her. As long as she gave an order, someone would do it. She almost always stayed in the public house and did not get involved in fighting or killing. Even if she had innate martial arts, it was difficult to unleash its power due to her lack of experience. Feng Xiaohua is despicable. He tortures people for fun. Su Ru gritted her teeth. He could have killed me with one slash, but he had to tease and torture me. Seeing my pitiful expression, he forced me to beg for mercy. He said that if I begged for mercy, he would spare my life. I must kill him. Her voice was cold and filled with pain. Chu Li stepped forward and patted her shoulder. He sighed in his heart. She was a flower in a greenhouse. She had never experienced a storm. Usually, people in the public house would not show this ugly side to her. It was the first time she met it. It was inevitable that she would be traumatized. "Just kill this kind of person. Don't think too much," Chu Li said gently. "I will kill him for you. I want to kill him myself." Su Ru said hatefully, "Then he still has to live for a long time." Chu Li shook his head and said he will harm more people in Snow Lunar Pavilion. Feng Xiaohua was an outstanding disciple of the Green Hill. He had a sinister mind, but his martial arts were powerful. If a normal disciple of the Snow Lunar Pavilion were to encounter him, it would be difficult for them to escape. Previously, he had ignored the grudges of the martial arts world, but at this time, he couldn't just ignore it. Footsteps could be heard from outside, followed by a knock on the door. "Is Junior Sister Du in?" "Please come in," Su Ru said. 2 men entered the room. One of them had a dignified appearance and was as powerful as a lion. The other had a plain appearance and dark skin. His eyes were intelligent. "Brother Zhao, Brother Yang." Su Ru closed fist saluted and introduced them to Chu Li. The muscular young man was Zhao Feihu, and the other young man was Yang Lingfeng. They were all outstanding disciples of the Snow Lunar Pavilion. "Sai, we wanted to visit you a long time ago, but senior brother Zhao told us that junior sister Du's face was injured and that you didn't want to see anyone. That's why we're here now." Yang Lingfeng sat on the garden stool, slapped his thigh, and sighed. "Don't worry, junior sister Du, our medicine is the best. Which sister in the valley hasn't been injured before? Look at them. They're all beautiful, and none of them have scars." Zhao Feihu nodded. "Yes, junior sister Du, you don't have to worry about this." Su Ru let out a sigh of relief. Then I'm relieved. That bastard Feng is a disgusting fellow. If you encounter him, you have to run away. Everyone knows that, Yang Feng said. Don't give him a chance to fight next time. We'll find a chance to destroy him. Su Ru said, his martial arts is very powerful. Actually, Junior Sister Du, you're very powerful too. Yang Feng smiled. For a disciple to become an innate master, he's definitely a genius. It's just that he works behind closed doors, unlike us who have people to spar with. Junior Sister Du, you should come out and spar with us more often. With more fighting experience, with your qualifications, you'll definitely surpass Feng. Feng Xiaohua is also a genius, Zhao Feihu said. Yang Feng scoffed. We still have Junior Sister Du Xia. Perfected innate masters could enter the surpassing state to comprehend the Grandmaster's boundary. Being a disciple who had perfected innate masters as a disciple, he could be considered a genius. What was Feng Xiaohua to him? Chu Li smiled. He saw through their thoughts. Their target was Xiao Qi, and she was his rival in love. As expected, Yang Feng beat around the bush to find out about Xiao Qi. He asked about her hobbies, what she usually did, and whether she liked anyone. Su Ru was a little impatient. Chu Li coughed softly and said gently, Brother Zhao, Brother Yang, Du Xia, and I are engaged. Ah. Yang Feng cried out. Su Ru's eyes widened. Zhao Feihu looked at him from head to toe. You guys are engaged? Yang Feng asked loudly, and turned to look at Su Ru. Su Ru hesitated for a moment and slowly nodded. She did not know what Chu Li was up to, but it was good for him to stop these guys from thinking about her. After the two entered the snow lunar pavilion, they revealed themselves. There were many beauties in the snow lunar pavilion, but Xiao Qi was not as beautiful. She attracted too many admirers. Like them, there were many who were interested in the lady. She had already dealt with 2 waves of them. Yet, she could not directly chase them away. She could only endure it. When did she ever have to endure it? In the public house. Chu Li's words directly solved the problem. Of course, she would not expose him. Yang Feng looked at Chu Li and shook his head. Brother Du, don't blame me for being rude. I think you are not worthy of Sister Du Xia. Chu Li smiled. If I am not worthy, then who is? Of course it's Brother Zhao. Yang Feng pointed at Zhao Feihu and laughed. Brother Zhao is the youth champion of the Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chu Li said, we are engaged. I believe Du Xia will not break the promise. Why don't you withdraw yourself? Don't delay Sister Du Xia. Yang Feng said. Chu Li shook his head. I will not break the promise. Yang Feng frowned and looked at him. Su Ru scoffed. Brother Yang, what are you trying to do? Sister Du, don't worry and recuperate. We will avenge you. Yang Feng patted his chest. If Brother Zhao takes action, Feng will be dead. Su Ru said, Thank you, Brother Zhao. She scoffed in her mind. Zhao Feihu and Feng Xiaohua's martial arts were almost the same. They had fought a few times. Both had wins and losses, but they could not do anything to each other. Zhao Feihu said, I will meet Feng Xiaohua in a few days. Brother Zhao, don't force yourself. Let my brother go. Su Ru said. She turned to look at Chu Li. Brother Zhao, killing Feng Xiaohua will be a piece of cake. Chu Li said, As long as I know where he is, I will take his life. Good. Yang Feng gave him a thumbs up. How heroic! Chu Li smiled and closed fist saluted. Yang Feng said, Leave this to me. I will find out where he is and tell Brother Du. Chu Li said, Thank you. Yang Feng smiled faintly and looked at Zhao Feihu. Zhao Feihu shook his head. Brother Du, Feng Xiaohua is the #1 master of Green Hill and Green Bull. He is cunning. He will not be easy to deal with. Chu Li smiled. Thank you for the reminder, Brother Zhao, why don't we work together? Zhao Feihu said. Yang Lingfeng waved his hand. Brother Zhao, don't mess around. Su Ru glared at Yang Lingfeng. Yang Lingfeng smiled. It's good to let Brother Du see how powerful Feng Xiaohua is. Otherwise, he will say that Snow Lunar Pavilion is useless. Chu Li smiled. I will wait for Brother Yang's news. Brother Du, stay in the ravine for 2 days. I will find him as soon as possible. Yang Lingfeng said. Chu Li nodded and closed fist saluted. See you. Chapter 238. After they left, Su Ru stared at Chu Li. Are you crazy? She did not know how Lady Xiao would react to the news. Chu Li spread his hands. Let them give up, and you'll save yourself some trouble. Sigh, what you said was not appropriate. Su Ru shook her head. Chu Li changed the topic. Your place is not bad. Should I stay here tonight? Impossible, Su Ru said. The lake is the residence of the female disciples. The male disciples don't stay here. It seems that there are not many female disciples, Chu Li said. He glanced at the lake and saw that there were 55 pavilions. It seemed that there were only 55 female disciples. The disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion would rather have nothing than to win with numbers. Did anything happen at home? Su Ru asked. Chu Li smiled. Something big has happened. He told her about the kidnapping of Song Yuning from Huai Public House. Su Ru was stunned. Master Xiao Taiying and Lady Song are in love? Su Ru was shocked. I really did not know. Chu Li said, both of them fell in love at first sight. They fell in love with each other at first sight. Nobody can do anything about it. No wonder it took so long the last time. Su Ru frowned and sighed. I don't know if this lady is easy to serve. Lady Song is very smart, Chu Li said. Sigh. Su Ru sighed. What about the second lady? She was a little worried. The sister-in-law and the youngest sister-in-law were born to be enemies. It was easy to get dirty. It would be troublesome to have a sister-in-law with a bad temper. Chu Li said, everything is going well. Su Ru then asked a lot of questions, and Chu Li answered them one by one. After a while, Su Ru's spirit gradually weakened. Her injuries were not only on her face, but also on her internal injuries. She was much weaker than before. Chu Li felt sorry for her. She faced life and death as soon as she entered. She was injured and needed care the most. Xiao Qi was isolated, and she was alone. He could imagine her pain and sadness. The pride in her bones was still there. She could not show her weakness. Chu Li said, you rest first. I will read for a while. There are many books on the shelf. You can read them yourself. Su Ru lay on the bed. She yawned. I will sleep for a while. Okay. Chu Li took out a book and sat in front of the desk. Su Ru laid on the bed and looked at his back. Her heart was filled with security, and she completely relaxed. He slowly fell asleep. When she woke up, the sky outside the window was already filled with rosy clouds, and the valley was dyed rosy red. She turned her head and saw that Chu Li was sitting in front of a desk, reading a book in the dimly lit room. The house was exceptionally quiet, and the chirping of the birds in the valley could be heard. She smiled and stretched her body, sighing comfortably. It had been a long time since she had slept so deeply. Chu Li put down his book and looked over. Su Ru quickly reached out to touch the white veil. The white veil on her face fell off from time to time. Chu Li shook his head. The wounds on my face have healed. Are you done? Su Ru touched her face. Chu Li pointed at the mirror. Su Ru leaned over to take a look and asked in surprise, is it really healed? Her face was scratched by Feng Xiaohua's knife and became an ugly monster. Now that she touched it, there was no scar at all. This ointment was really magical. Chu Li frowned. He saw the scene in Suru's mind. She said it lightly, but the truth was much more terrifying. After Feng Xiaohua killed senior sister Mo, he severely injured Suru. Suru lay on the ground, unable to move. Feng Xiaohua cut her face again and again with a smile on his face, forcing her to beg for mercy. She forced herself not to open her mouth, so he smiled and cut her again. When senior sister Su rushed over, her face had been cut more than 10 times. It was horrifying. Although the Snow Lunar Pavilion's ointment was magical and could remove the scars on her face, it could not remove the wound on her heart. This incident had left a huge shadow in her heart. Chu Li originally only wanted to kill Feng Xiaohua with one cut, but he changed his mind. He could not kill him so easily. He had to let Suru do it herself, or else the shadow in her heart would never be removed. It would become a demon that would affect her for the rest of her life, and even change her temperament. Footsteps came from outside, and Yang Lingfeng's voice was heard. "Brother Du, let's go for a drink to welcome you back." Chu Li raised his voice and said, "Brother Yang, please wait." He turned to look at Su Ru. "I'll come back tomorrow." Su Ru pouted her red lips. "Be careful. These people must be up to no good." Chu Li left the waterside pavilion and followed Yang Lingfeng away from the lake to the bottom of the ravine. Pavilions were built on the stone walls, suspended in the air, connected by wooden bridges. It was like the hollow temple from his original world. Yang Lingfeng tiptoed and flew up, landing on the wooden bridge, and waved his hand. Chu Li flew up and landed beside him. "This is where we're going to eat." Yang Lingfeng pointed at a pavilion, then led the way and stepped in. Chu Li glanced at the ravine. Standing there, he could see the whole ravine. The flowers were like a brocade, the grass was like a carpet, and the clear lake was like a waterside pavilion. It was a beautiful sight. He closed his eyes and followed Yang Lingfeng into the house. 4 square tables were put together, and there was a big silver basin on the table. The basin was filled with snails, and the aroma filled the air. 7 young men sat around the table, chatting as they ate the snails. Yang Lingfeng clapped his hands and smiled. "Come, let me introduce you. This is Du Xia's fiancé, Du Feng, Brother Du." Everyone's gaze turned to him, examining him. Chu Li smiled and closed fist saluted. Zhao Feihu said, "Brother Du, please have a seat." Yang Lingfeng dragged Chu Li to the main seat. Chu Li declined the offer twice and sat down. This made everyone even more unhappy. The male disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion had seen many beautiful women, but when they saw Xiao Qi, they were shocked. Unfortunately, Senior Du had perfected innate mastery, and she needed to isolate herself to understand the integration of heaven and man, so they could not see her often. This made her even more mysterious, and they felt that Xiao Qi was like a fairy. Now, they suddenly heard that the fairy-like Senior Du had a fiancé, and it was this boorish man in front of them. While they were angry, they also felt the same as Yang Lingfeng. This guy in front of them was not worthy of the fairy-like Senior Du. "Let me introduce everyone." Yang Lingfeng smiled and introduced the 8 people beside him. Zhao Feihu did not need to be introduced, but the names of the other 7. A handsome young man put down the snails and said coldly, "Brother Du, what's your cultivation level?" Chu Li smiled. "Brother Hu, I'm at the innate mastery's boundary." His inner energy had dissipated, and he did not have a martial artist's anomaly, but his aura was shocking, so no one would think that he was ordinary. Innate mastery. Hu Chenghui scoffed. "You're much older than Senior Du, right?" Chu Li shook his head. "Du Xia only looks young, only 5 years younger than me." 5 years, maybe in less than 5 years, Senior Du will become a grandmaster. "What about you, Brother Du?" Hu Chenghui shook his head. You won't be able to catch up to Junior Do. Why do I have to catch up to her? Chu Li smiled. It's impossible for a husband and wife to have the same martial arts. There will always be stronger and weaker ones. Then the man should be stronger. Hu Chenghui scoffed. Or else, won't the universe be turned upside down, and the world will not be at peace? The universe will be turned upside down, and the world will not be at peace. A slightly hoarse female voice came from outside. It was magnetic and moving. A tall and graceful woman stepped into the building. She was bright and beautiful. Her clear eyes swept across everyone, and she said lightly, "Junior brother, do you think that women are born to be weaker than men?" When Hu Chenghui saw her, he instantly became a little shorter and quickly smiled. "Senior Sister Su," the tall and graceful woman scoffed. Her clear eyes fell on Chu Li. "Brother Du, this is Shu Qingdai, Senior Sister Su." Yang Lingfeng quickly smiled. "The person who saved Junior Du Chiu is Senior Sister Su." Chapter 239. P.S. On the last day, I will continue to update 6 times. If you have a monthly ticket, please vote for me. Shu Qingdai sized him up, then nodded slightly. "Brother Du, please take a seat." She sat down next to Chu Li, taking over Yang Lingfeng's seat. Yang Lingfeng chuckled as he waved his hand. He signaled everyone to move 1 seat to the back, and he sat next to Shu Qingdai. A faint fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. Chu Li secretly observed Shu Qingdai. His slender arms and palms moved gracefully. Each and every one of his movements had an indescribable rhythm to it. Clearly, he was an expert swordsman with outstanding talent. His talent was outstanding, but he was also proud and arrogant. He looked down on everyone else and was extremely arrogant. "Are you really Junior Sister Du, Xia's fiancé?" Shu Qingdai stared at him with her clear eyes. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Shu Qingdai shook her head and sighed. "It's such a shame. Women have such a hard life. Most of the time, a clever wife is accompanied by a clumsy husband." Chu Li could not help but laugh. "Miss Su, Du Xia is clever, but I'm not stupid either, am I?" "A boorish man," Shu Qingdai scoffed. She turned her head and glanced at the crowd. Men are usually useless, but they're so full of themselves. They think that they're the rightful masters of the world, and that women should listen to them. Chu Li glanced at Zhao Feihu. Zhao Feihu looked straight at Shu Qingdai. Everyone could see that he adored Shu Qingdai. "I heard that you want to kill Feng Xiaohua?" Shu Qingdai asked. Yang Lingfeng hurriedly dragged the silver basin in front of her and handed her a silver needle. "Come, Brother Du, eat some snow conch. This is from our lake, and it's very delicious." Chu Li smiled and took the needle. "I'll have to try it." He picked up a snow snail, picked up the meat, and put it into his mouth. It was tender and smooth, and after chewing a few times, it was extremely delicious. No wonder they were eating so happily. It was indeed delicious. Shu Qingdai glared at Yang Lingfeng. Yang Lingfeng laughed and pretended not to see anything. Chu Li laughed to himself. The omniscient mirror flashed, and his smile widened. Yang Lingfeng had a crush on Shu Qingdai. Unfortunately, Shu Qingdai did not like anyone, not even Yang Lingfeng. He didn't like the youth champion Zhao Feihu either. She was arrogant and looked down on everything. She felt that all men in the world were the same and that her legs would go soft at the sight of women. Fickleness was not worth liking. Although Zhao Feihu was the youth champion of the Snow Lunar Pavilion, he was only the champion of the Snow Lunar Pavilion. The difference between them was similar. His stamina was slightly stronger, but he could only gain the upper hand after a long battle. She was disdainful of men who could not subdue her. Shu Qingdai looked at Chu Li again. Brother Du, do you know how strong Feng Xiaohua is? Chu Li nodded. I heard he's the youth champion of Green Hill. He's not the top youth expert. Shu Qingdai scoffed and said, his brother, Feng Xiaorong, is a full-fledged innate master. He's been in isolation all this time. He's the real #1 youth elite, just like Sister Du Xia. As she spoke, she glanced at Zhao Feihu. Zhao Feihu was known as the #1 youth expert, but junior Sister Du Xia was a perfected Xiantian expert. She was the true #1 youth expert. Zhao Feihu looked at her quietly, not saying a word. Yang Lingfeng was unconvinced and said, Feng Xiaorong will become a grandmaster sooner or later. He won't participate in any disputes. He couldn't be considered a young expert. Senior Sister Su, Senior Brother Zhao is our Snow Lunar Pavilion's #1 youth expert. Junior Sister Du Xia doesn't count. Humph, your way of calculating is really weird. Shu Qingdai said impatiently. All right, let's not talk about this. If Sister Du Xia comes out of isolation and sees you guys egging Brother Du to go against Feng Xiaohua, what will she think? We didn't eggy him. Yang Lingfeng said loudly. Brother Du suggested it himself. Isn't that right, Brother Du? Chu Li was eating a snow snail. He smiled and nodded. This delicacy would be gone once he left Snow Lunar Pavilion. Every little bit counts. Shu Qingdai scoffed and said, Brother Du doesn't know how powerful Feng Xiaohua is. You guys don't know either? What if something happens to Brother Du? How are you going to explain this to Sister Du Xia? Chu Li sighed and put down the silver needles. Thank you, Miss Shu. Feng Xiaohua almost killed Du Qiu. As her brother, how can I just watch and not avenge her? Even if you want to take revenge, you have to act within your means, Shu Qingdai said. Feng Xiaohua is extremely cunning. So many of us couldn't kill him. His light body technique is high, and he's cunning and cunning. Don't get yourself killed instead. Chu Li smiled. My light body technique is not bad either. I can definitely escape. He knew that Shu Qingdai meant well, but she really looked down on him. Yang Lingfeng said, Why don't we have a spar? When Shu Qingdai said that, he felt a chill down his spine. If Du Feng was really just an embroidered pillow and was killed by Feng Xiaohua, he would not be able to explain himself. Chu Li waved his hand and smiled. I won't embarrass myself. He had to be humble first to avoid being arrogant and looking down on Snow Lunar Pavilion. It was easy to defeat them, but it was more important not to let Suru's situation worsen because of a moment of happiness. Suru had just arrived. Master and Xiao Qi were both in isolated cultivation. She was all alone. If she was isolated by her peers, it would be too pitiful. As a man, it was not a big deal for him to be looked down upon. He was thick-skinned and not worth mentioning. If something happens to Brother Du, we won't be able to explain it to Sister Du Xia. Let's have a spar. Yang Lingfeng closed fist saluted. Or else, I won't dare to tell you about Feng Xiaohua's whereabouts. Sigh. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Looks like if I don't embarrass myself today, everyone won't be satisfied. You're a man. Be decisive. Don't be so wishy-washy. Someone could not stand it and shouted. Chu Li smiled and stood up. Brother Zhao, shall we have a spar? Sure. Zhao Feihu pushed his chair and stood up. Yang Lingfeng said, Let's not go too far. I'll go get the sword and knife. He ran away and returned in the blink of an eye with a wooden sword and a wooden knife. The wooden knife felt heavy in his hand. It was no different from a real knife. The sword and knife were not sharpened, so one would be injured. As long as it was not a vital point, it would not be fatal. The crowd pulled the tables away to make space. The two of them stood opposite each other. Chu Li closed fist saluted. Brother Zhao, let's have a limit of 10 moves. If we can't decide the winner, we'll stop. What do you think? 30 moves. Zhao Feihu said. All right. Chu Li nodded and swung his knife. Watch my knife. Zhao Feihu raised his wooden sword and went forward. The two of them exchanged blows. They exchanged more than 30 moves in one breath. The crowd was fascinated by the fight. Chu Li's knife force was sharp and powerful. It was seamless and flawless. Zhao Feihu's sword force was exquisite. It was fast and ruthless, but he could not break through Chu Li's knife force. The two of them were evenly matched. After 30 moves, Chu Li took a step back and left the ring. He closed fists, saluted, and smiled. Thank you for letting me win. The crowd looked at him in a different light. No matter what, to be able to fight Zhao Feihu without losing meant that his knife technique was powerful enough. They could not compare. Xu Qingdai frowned and looked at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled. My knife technique can kill Feng Xiaohua, right? All right, then we'll see what you're capable of. Yang Lingfeng smiled. Once there's news about Feng Xiaohua, I'll inform you immediately. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Thank you. Zhao Feihu was deep in thought. He had a feeling that Chu Li did not use his full strength, but he was still better than him. If it was any other time, he would have pointed it out directly. However, with Xu Qingdai in front of him, he could not bring himself to say it. The reason why Xu Qingdai treated him differently was because of his martial arts. If he lost, what would she think of him? Xu Qingdai stood up and closed fist saluted. Brother Du, I'll take my leave first. Welcome to the Snow Lunar Pavilion. Chu Li closed fist saluted and smiled. No matter what, she was Su Ru's savior. He was extremely grateful. As soon as Xu Qingdai left, the crowd's suppressed excitement rose again. They all started talking at once. Brother Du, you're amazing. We'll wait for your good news. Chapter 240. Chu Li agreed with a smile. Soon, the dishes were served. Yang Lingfeng called for someone to bring in 20 jars of wine. Brother Du, this is the wine brewed by Snow Lunar Pavilion. It's definitely strong. Come. Yang Lingfeng lifted the wine jars and filled everyone's bowls. He then raised his bowl and shouted, Kill Feng Xiaohua. Cheers. Kill Feng Xiaohua. Cheers. The crowd roared. Chu Li smiled and finished his bowl. Their hatred and killing intent towards Feng Xiaohua were palpable. Although the dishes were not as exquisite as the ones at Sky Inn, they were fresh. Chu Li was not picky after a few bowls of wine. He chatted and laughed with the crowd. They talked about interesting things in the martial arts world and what he saw when he left the mountain. Chu Li was easygoing and liked to listen. After a few bowls of wine, the crowd felt that he was not that annoying anymore. Yang Lingfeng's alcohol tolerance was average. After a jar of wine, his tongue became bigger and his speech became less fluent. Let me tell you, Brother Du, Feng Xiaohua's light body technique is 2F asterisk king powerful. If not, we would have killed him a long time ago. Yang Lingfeng pulled on Chu Li's sleeve and said, More than 10 of our brothers and sisters have died in his hands. If you can really kill Feng Xiaohua, you'll be our benefactor, and Sister Du Xia will be yours. Chu Li said, If he is so hateful, why didn't the elders from your faction do anything? We can't. Yang Lingfeng shook his head and sighed. This is a rule set by the founders of both factions. When disciples fight, the elders cannot interfere. Chu Li frowned. So we can only watch him kill. Sai, if Master and Uncle Master were to make a move, the old folks from Green Hill would make a move too, and then we would all be dead. Yang Lingfeng scoffed. We can only blame ourselves for not being strong enough to kill him. Chu Li pondered and nodded. He understood this. This rule was set for the sake of each faction. If not, the elders would not be able to do anything, and the faction would be doomed. Anyway, Brother Du, we are all counting on you. Yang Lingfeng laughed. Chu Li said slowly, don't worry. Feng Xiaohua will not live long. Brother Meng is right in front of me, and I can't save him. Yang Lingfeng shouted. Feng Xiaohua, F*CKU. Brother Yang, you are drunk. Zhao Feihu pulled him away. Yang Lingfeng cursed out loud. With tears streaming down her face, she leaned on the table and cried. Everyone's eyes reddened as grief and indignation surged in their hearts. Chu Li sighed to himself as he experienced this feeling of helplessness and hatred. Zhao Feihu looked at them helplessly. Brother Du, please excuse us. This bunch of fellows are too useless. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Zhao Feihu sighed. It's all my fault for not being able to kill him. Chu Li patted his shoulder, not knowing how to comfort him. His skills were inferior, and there was nothing he could do. Yang Lingfeng and the others were all drunk. They cried and screamed. In the end, they all fell asleep on the ground. Zhao Feihu was in a bad mood. He didn't drink much, but he was soon drunk. In the end, Chu Li was the only one who was clear-headed. He looked at the crowd. Where was he going to sleep tonight? A green shadow flashed. Xu Qingdai appeared again in a light green gown. A cold smile hung on her bright and beautiful face. This bunch of good-for-nothings. As expected, they get drunk the moment they drink. They only have the ability to drown their sorrows in alcohol. Chu Li closed fist saluted at her. Come with me. I'll bring you to the guest house. Xu Qingdai wrinkled her jade-like nose and fanned it. This smell. Let's go. Chu Li stood up. Thank you, Miss Xu. You're Du Qiu's brother. You're not an outsider. You're welcome. Xu Qingdai led the way in front. Her tall and slender figure was like the reincarnation of a Victoria's Secret supermodel. The two of them walked along the bridge and into the depths of the valley. After walking for a while, they stopped in front of a pavilion. You can sleep here first. Let's go in and see if you're satisfied. Chu Li entered the pavilion and went up to the second floor. There were a total of 5 rooms. He randomly picked one. It was clean and tidy. As it faced the south, there was plenty of sunlight. It was not humid at all. The bedding was dry and warm. Xu Qingdai followed him into the room. She leaned against the doorframe. If you have nothing else to do, stay here for a few more days. You can leave after Du Qiu recovers. She needs someone to accompany and comfort her. Okay. Chu Li nodded. Sleep early. Xu Qingdai waved her hand and left. Chu Li did not meditate or cultivate. He had a good night's sleep. Although he did not see Shao Qi, he could feel Shao Qi's scent in the valley. He slept peacefully. The next morning, when he woke up, other than the chirping of birds, there were also faint shouts. When he listened carefully, he realized that there were many people cultivating. He opened the window. The entire valley was in front of him. Only the martial arts field was blocked by the forest. A dense forest surrounded the martial arts field. From the omniscient mirror, he saw that the size of the martial arts field was not inferior to the martial arts hall. There were 50 young ladies and 60 young men practicing their swordsmanship. They were clearly separated and occupied one side of the field. This gave Chu Li a sense of familiarity. It was as if he had returned to the school in his past life. The martial arts field of the High Duke's public house did not have such a scene. The male and female protectors practiced together. He faced the morning sun and stretched his body. There was a knock on the door. A man in a green shirt came in with water. He smiled. Your meal is ready. Call me whenever you're hungry. Chu Li thanked him. After washing up, he went downstairs and went to the waterside pavilion on the lake. Su-Ru sat on the bed, with her legs crossed. When she saw Chu-Li, she opened her eyes. "They didn't make you drink last night. They didn't make me drink. They made themselves drink." Chu-Li smiled. "I'll leave after you've recovered." "Really?" Su-Ru's eyes lit up. Chu-Li smiled. "I have nothing to do now. I'll meet up with the second lady in 4 months." "That's great." Su-Ru smiled. "When will Du Xia come out?" "It's hard to say. She'll be out in a year or so." "Do you want me to help you recover as soon as possible?" "Of course not." Su-Ru waved her hand. "Sister Imo is also injured. If I recover too quickly, people will think it's strange." She actually wanted Chu-Li to stay longer. "All right." Chu-Li smiled. "I'll go visit Miss Imo. I have to thank her. I'll bring you after dinner." Su-Ru said, "I've seen Miss Su yesterday." Chu-Li smiled. "She really is a powerful person." Su-Ru said, "Sister Su is the senior sister. She's the strongest in martial arts. According to Master, she'll enter the Grand Master's boundary in the future." Chu-Li smiled and nodded. It was no wonder. Snow Lunar Pavilion had its own surpassing state. As one of the strongest in martial arts, Shu Qingdai was destined to enter the Grand Master's boundary. A future Grand Master naturally had the right to be arrogant. But Sister Su hates men. Don't be mad at her. That won't happen. After all, she saved your life. After dinner, they went to Sister Mo's place. Although Mo Yenron's appearance was not as good as Su-Ru's, she had a snow-white oval face with almond eyes and peach cheeks. She had taken the spirit blessing pill and other spirit pills. Her injuries were similar to Su-Ru's. Chapter 241. P.S. Are we going to be caught up at the last minute? Is such a tragedy going to happen to us? Chu-Li smiled. You got the news so soon? We have people watching him. Young Lingfeng scoffed. This guy finally went down the mountain alone. Brother Du, do you want to go? No rush. Chu-Li said, let Du Qiu recover first. Recover? Young Lingfeng shouted, and turned to look at Su-Ru. Sister Du Qiu's injury won't recover anytime soon. By the time she recovers, Feng Xiaohua will be back. There's always a next time. Chu-Li smiled and looked at Su-Ru. Su-Ru was dispirited, and her energy was insufficient. Not only would she not be able to get rid of her inner demons, but it would also worsen them. It would be difficult to get rid of them. He wanted to motivate her, and then kill Feng Xiaohua. Only then she could become a master in the martial arts world, and he could leave with peace of mind. If Shu Qingdai did not save her this time, Su-Ru might have died. He did not want the same thing to happen again. He needed to change Su-Ru quickly so that she could protect herself. We don't know when the next time will be, Yang Lingfeng said. This guy knows that we want to kill him, so he rarely acts alone. There will be a chance. Chu-Li said, Brother Yang, Du Qiu will recover in half a month. Let's lure him out and kill him. Sigh. Yang Lingfeng stomped his feet. He's cunning and cunning. How can he be tricked so easily? Yang Lingfeng suddenly laughed and said, Brother Du, don't tell me you're suddenly afraid. Chu-Li smiled. There's no use trying to provoke me. Once Du Qiu recovers, I will go immediately. I will go when she recovers. I'm really impressed. Yang Lingfeng gave him a thumbs up and said helplessly, All right, we'll wait for the next time. Footsteps were heard again. Shu Qingdai flew over and glanced around. Why is it so lively? Brother Du, you're here too. Brother Yang, is there news about Feng Xiaohua? Yes, he went down the mountain alone. Yang Lingfeng said weakly, This is a good chance. Shu Qingdai looked at Chu-Li. Yang Lingfeng scoffed. Brother Du doesn't want to go. We have to wait for junior sister Du to recover. before we go. There's no time to lose. Shu Qingdai said, "Why do we have to wait for Sister Du Qiu to recover? Looks like I really don't have the confidence." It's not that he doesn't have the confidence, but he's afraid that junior sister Du Qiu's injuries will worsen when she hears the bad news. "I want Du Qiu to do it," Chu Li said. He naturally would not tell anyone about Suru's inner demons. Others would laugh at her weakness. Suru and the others widened their eyes and looked at him in surprise. Chu Li said, "Du Qiu's cultivation level is high enough, but she lacks the experience of life and death battles. She can use Feng Xiaohua to sharpen her blade." Such courage! Shu Qingdie's eyes brightened, and she gave him a thumbs up. Regardless of whether he was being arrogant or not, his boldness was far from what the male disciples in the valley could compare to. Suru opened her mouth. When she thought of Feng Xiaohua's ugly face and his chilling smile, she could not help but shiver. She gritted her teeth and nodded. "All right, I'll deal with him myself." She had stubbornness and self-improvement in her bones. Although she was soft on the outside, she was hard on the inside. Even if she was instinctively afraid, she gritted her teeth and faced it head-on. Shu Qingdai said, "All right, I'll go this time." "Sister Su, it's useless." Yang Lingfeng shook his head and sighed. "You can't kill him." "I couldn't kill him before, but I might not be able to now." Shu Qingdai scoffed. "My martial arts has improved greatly. I can try." Sigh. Yang Lingfeng looked at Chu Li in disappointment, shook his head, and left. He did not have high hopes for Chu Li at first, but he hated Feng Xiaohua too much. Blood feud, but there was still a sliver of hope. He knew that with his own abilities, he would never be able to kill Feng Xiaohua in his lifetime. He could only rely on others. He used his well-connected information network to help others kill Feng Xiaohua, which was also a form of comfort for himself. Suru could not bear to see this, so she whispered, "Why don't we go?" Chu Li smiled. "There's no rush. There'll be a chance." He turned his head and said, "Miss Shu, once Feng Xiaohua comes out, it's best that the Valley disciples return as soon as possible in case they meet him again and get killed by him." "It's too late now." Shu Qingdai scoffed. Shu Qingdai sat next to Mo Yanran and touched her wrist. "He'll be fine in half a month. I'm going now." Mo Yanran said, "Sister Su, be careful." Shu Qingdai scoffed proudly. "Even if I can't kill him, he can't kill me either. Let's go." She stood up and fist saluted, then left the waterside pavilion. After the two returned to Suru's waterside pavilion, Suru sighed. "You stay here with me." "All right." Chu Li smiled. He knew Suru's intention. If he rejected her this time, the male disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion would definitely think that he was afraid of death to avoid a fight. They would think that he was just bragging before, and that he would be afraid if they really met him. It was inevitable that they would look down on him and gossip about him. Suru sat on the couch and pondered. Chu Li sat at the table and started reading. He was pressing her step by step, using the safety of the disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion to pressure her. Let's see if she could explode. If she could not, he would just light another fire. He did not believe that he could not ignite her. The sun rose into the sky, and Suru finally spoke. "Help me heal. I want to kill him immediately." Chu Li turned his head and looked at her. "No rush." Suru said, "If we don't kill him this time, he will kill more disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion. I want to kill him." The veins on her smooth forehead were faintly visible, and her gaze was determined. Chu Li stared at her for a while, and she looked back at him without blinking. Chu Li slowly nodded. "Good, that's more like it. Since you've decided, then let's go." He saw Suru's murderous expression, and it was the best time to unsheath his sword. Su Ru smiled, walked to the window, and shouted, "Sister Su!" The shout traveled far in the ravine. Shu Qingdai walked over gracefully, seemingly slow but actually fast, as if she was walking on water. "What's wrong, Sister Du?" "I changed my mind. I'll go with Big Brother." "You haven't recovered from your injuries. Big Brother has a secret healing technique. He can help me heal on the way." Su Ru said, "Where can we find him?" "You guys really want to go?" Shu Qingdai looked at Chu Li. Chu Li nodded. Shu Qingdai said, "Then let's go together. You guys won't be able to find him." "All right." Chu Li really did not know the way around, and he needed a guide. "Let's go now." "Let's go," Shu Qingdai said. The three of them did not pack anything, and directly left the waterside pavilion, heading out of the ravine. Yang Lingfeng chased after them from afar. "Hey, Sister Su, Brother Du, where are you going?" "To kill Feng Xiaohua," Shu Qingdai said. Yang Lingfeng said, "He's in Luminous Town." "Got it." Shu Qingdai waved her hand behind her and glided away. Chu Li walked side by side with her, his right palm on Su Ru's waist. Spiritual energy from all directions surged in, circulating along with the healing heart technique. The vitality of spiritual energy far surpassed the spirit pills, and with the healing heart technique, the effect was outstanding. Shu Qingdai suddenly sped up, moving like a flickering light, wanting to see Chu Li's light body technique. Chu Li was calm, and he walked side by side with her. Seeing that he had such a light body technique, Shu Qingdai was relieved. Even if she could not win, she could still run. Shu Qingdai knew that Chu Li was channeling to help Su Ru heal, so she did not say anything to disturb him. She glanced at Su Ru from time to time and saw that her pale face was getting redder and redder. Luminous Town was 200 miles away from Snow Lunar Pavilion, and they arrived in the afternoon. Shu Qingdai was about to look for the hidden guards of Snow Lunar Pavilion, but Chu Li did not stop walking. He came to the front of a house and said to Su Ru, "He's inside. You can go in by yourself." Su Ru's face was rosy, and her face was glowing. She bit her lip and nodded lightly, pulled out her long sword, and glided into the house. Chapter 242. Shu Qingdai looked at him. Chu Li shook his head and said, "Feng Xiaohua is inside. Let her handle it herself." "How did you know?" Shu Qingdai asked in surprise. Chu Li smiled without saying a word. Shu Qingdai said, "We can't just stand here. What if Sister Du is in danger?" Chu Li said, "Let's go and hold the line. Feng Xiaohua will definitely run away, and younger sister will also feel reliant on him. It's better to let her do it herself." "You're such a cruel big brother." Shu Qingdai stared at him. Chu Li said, "She was staying at home before, so she didn't know how evil people can be and how dangerous the martial arts world is. When she suddenly met someone like Feng Xiaohua, her hands and feet were tied, and she couldn't even use 70 to 80% of her martial arts. This is actually our fault." Shu Qingdai sighed and said, "We initially thought that she was also an innate master, but we didn't expect her to not have any battle experience." Chu Li smiled. "She can only blame her bad luck. No matter what, Miss Su saved her." Shu Qingdai shook her head. She furrowed her brows as she listened to the situation inside. She would occasionally glance at Chu Li. She was very curious about the man in front of her. However, Chu Li was not as daring as she thought he was. With the spirit blessing pill, he was full of confidence. Even if Su Ru was defeated and died, he could save her immediately. The omniscient mirror showed the situation in the house. Feng Xiaohua, dressed in a pale blue outfit, was practicing his knife skills in the yard. Seeing Su Ru floating down, he stood with his sword in front of him. He fixed his eyes on her and revealed a knowing smile. "Little beauty, we really are fated to meet again." When he saw Su Ru, he thought of how she had stared at him, stubbornly, angry, and hateful, but could only let him slash her face with his knife. Her beautiful face had been slashed into a hideous and terrifying appearance. When he thought of this, his whole body heated up and he became excited. "Little beauty, your face has recovered. I can play well again." Feng Xiaohua smiled and said, "Did you bring someone outside?" He was confident that his qigong was high, so even if there were people, he was not afraid. What he was least afraid of was an ambush. Suru trembled slightly. The sword pointed at him trembled as well. This made Feng Xiaohua more and more excited. He liked to see the helplessness and anger of a beauty like her the most. It was better than sleeping with a woman. It was too exciting and interesting. Surin coldly said, "Animal, I'll kill you today." "Sure, come and kill me." Feng Xiaohua giggled and said, "Let's see what you can do, little beauty. What are you waiting for?" "You're courting death." Suru clenched her teeth and thrust her sword forward. Feng Xiaohua laughed. The long saber turned into a waterfall and swung back in a tricky manner. His mouth was smiling, but his hands were merciless. They were fast and ruthless, like a snake coming out of its hole. Sura did not dodge. She took a step forward, and her sword moved even faster. Feng Xiaohua was a little surprised. The last time he fought with her, she was still a fledgling. She had the cultivation of the innate realm, but she was too timid to be ruthless. This time, however, it was as if she was a completely different person. It seemed like it was his doing. He had stimulated her to this extent. He smiled and took a step back to avoid the sword force. His long blade slashed horizontally and hit Suru. Sura did not take a step back. She stepped forward again and met the tip of the blade, thrusting her sword forward. Feng Xiaohua furrowed his brows. Although his movement technique was fast, Suru's sword continued to stab forward faster and faster. It could hit her, but it could also stab her. This little beauty wanted to take him down with her. However, he was a precious person. He was going to become a grandmaster in the future. How could he die here? Hee hee, little beauty, how does it feel to be cut on your face? As he swung his sword, his feet dodged. He chuckled and said, "How wonderful it is to have your delicate skin cut open." Suru bit her red lips and focused on her sword. She did not dodge. Chuli was outside. Even if she was hit in a vital spot, she would not die with the spirit blessing pill. She also had the ointment from Snow Lunar Pavilion, so there would not be any scars. She was fearless and went all out. Feng Xiaohua wanted to use words to affect her mind. It was a useful trick, but he did not know that these words made her more determined to kill. Her inner energy flowed faster, and her movements became faster. She had always been with Shaoqi. Everything she cultivated was profound, so she was better than Feng Xiaohua. When she saw Sister Mo being killed, her mind was in a mess. She did not have much of her martial arts left, which was why she was heavily injured by Feng Xiaohua. At this time, she was determined. She did not care about her own safety when she performed her moves. She did not dodge or evade. Every move she made aimed to hurt both of them. Feng Xiaohua gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. He relied on his superior light body technique to deal with her. "Little beauty, I've caught you this time. I won't cut your face again." Feng Xiaohua chuckled. "I'll strip you clean and hang you on the top of the city wall. Everyone will admire your beautiful body. Hee hee, aren't you happy?" Suru bit her red lips and did not say a word. Her eyes shone brighter. Feng Xiaohua said, "I'll do this every time I catch a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion. Let's see if they have the face to come out." Xu Qingdai gritted her teeth. She clenched her fists and was about to rush in. "Chu, Li lightly pressed on her shoulder. Shu Qingdai felt like a mountain was pressing down on her. She could not move. She could not help but widen her eyes. Li put his index finger in front of his lips and shook his head. Shu Qingdai bit her lips and glared at him. Li whispered, "Don't listen to his nonsense. Don't tell me there are no female disciples in Green Hill. Don't they care about their reputation?" "Damn it," Shu Qingdai scoffed in a low voice. Li said, "Why bother with a dead man?" "I want to see how Sister Du will do it," Shu Qingdai said. Li looked around and pointed at the roof. Shu Qingdai nodded. The two of them flew around the roof and hid behind it. They peeked out to see what was happening in the courtyard. Feng Xiaohua was forced to keep dodging. He had no time to care about his surroundings. Shu Qingdai was shocked. Sister Du had become so cruel. She was cruel to Feng Xiaohua and to herself. "Sai, I'm not in the mood today. I'll play with you some other time." Feng Xiaohua shook his head and sighed. He turned around and left. This time, he used a special technique. He took a step forward and was as fast as lightning. Su Ru stomped her foot and chased after him with her sword. Chi! The tip of the sword pierced through Feng Xiaohua's left thigh. Su Ru pulled out her sword. Blood gushed out like a fountain and splashed all over her body. Her shirt was instantly dyed red. She did not care at all. She stabbed again, without hesitation. Feng Xiaohua used his sword to block the attack. His face changed slightly. He knew something was wrong. Light body technique was his biggest trump card. That step just now was the fastest. It was the move he was most proud of. When he sprinted forward, no one could catch up to him. As long as he was a distance away, he could use his secret technique to stimulate his potential. No one could stop him. It was strange just now. Just as he was about to speed up, a strange force appeared out of nowhere and entered his body. He could not help but slow down and was hit by the sword. Bang! He swung his sword with his right hand and released a whistling arrow with his left. It exploded into a firework in the sky. Shu Qingdai looked up at the firework and smiled. Li ignored her and stared at the scene below. "I didn't expect Sister Du to be so powerful." Shu Qingdai said softly, "It's good that Feng Xiaohua is calling people over. They're just small fries. I'm going to kill a few of them." Li nodded. Chapter 243. Nice. Shu Qingdai cheered. She landed beside Suru and patted her shoulder. "Nice kill." Suru's body went limp and fell down. Shu Qingdai quickly helped her up and smiled. "This is your first time killing someone, right?" Suru's face turned pale. She frowned and said, "We finally killed him." Li floated to her side and patted her on the back. He smiled. "I thought you were going to torture him before killing him." A warm aura entered her body, alleviating her weakness. "I can't be bothered to torture him. The sooner he dies, the sooner he returns to heaven." Suru glared hatefully at Feng Xiaohua's corpse. She felt an indescribable sense of comfort in her heart. It was as if an invisible shackle had been broken, and she was completely free. Li said, "Chop off his head and bring it back to pay homage to our fellow disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion." Beheading? Suru's expression changed slightly. She knew that Li had a habit of beheading people after killing them. She dared to kill now, but beheading and killing were two different things. She still couldn't do it. Li glanced at Shu Qingdai. Shu Qingdai quickly waved her hand. Li smiled. "Only I can do it." The long saber on his waist flashed, and a snow-white light flashed. Feng Xiaohua's head was separated from his neck, but no blood flowed out. The blade was imbued with the Crescent Cryptic's inner force, which was extremely cold. It instantly sealed the blood flow. Chu Li went into the house and found a box. When he came out, he pouted his lips. Shu Qingdai and Suru entered the room and saw a young girl lying on the bed. Her face was already disfigured, and she was naked. There were whip marks all over her body, and there were bruises all over her body. It was a horrible sight, and she was no longer breathing. That animal! Shu Qingdai cursed. It's too easy for him to die so quickly. Little brother! Suddenly, a shout came from outside. Shu Qingdai and Suru hurried out of the house and saw a muscular young man squatting next to Feng Xiaohua's headless body. His handsome face was filled with rage, like a ferocious tiger squatting there, ready to pounce at any moment. Chu Li held the box and sized him up. Feng Xiaorong. Shu Qingye's expression changed drastically. She didn't expect the whistling arrow to be aimed at him, a perfected innate expert, a master who was halfway to becoming a grandmaster. Shu Qingdai. Feng Xiaorong raised his head and glared at Shu Qingdai coldly. So, it's you guys. Shu Qingdai groaned in her mind, then scoffed. Feng Xiaorong, aren't you in isolation? Could he have comprehended the Tao of unity of heaven and man? Don't worry. Feng Xiaorong pointed at his brother's corpse. The three of you can kill yourselves. Humph, how arrogant. Shu Qingdai sneered. Do you really think that you're a grandmaster? How laughable. If I make a move, it won't be that easy for you to die. Feng Xiaorong said coldly, if I don't make them howl for 9 days and 9 nights, begging me to end you all, my surname isn't Feng. Chu Li sighed to himself. Indeed, one could not judge a book by its cover. He was handsome, but similar to Feng Xiaohua, they were both cruel people. The one with the surname Feng, you're a full-fledged, innate master. You're not allowed to get involved in the disputes between the younger generation. Don't tell me you've forgotten about this rule. Shu Qingdai secretly pulled Suru, signaling her to leave first with her eyes, while she would act as a shield. Suru shook her head. I'll go into isolated cultivation after killing you all. Feng Xiaorong sneered. Who will know that I'm the one who did this? Despicable and shameless. Shu Qingdai pouted her red lips and glared at Suru. None of you can escape. Feng Xiaorong saw her eyebrows twitching. He said calmly, come at me together. Chu Li turned his head and said, Du Qiu, do you want to try? I'm no match for him. You do it. Suru said. Shu Qingdai said, I'll do it. She did not wait for Chu Li to speak and leaped towards Feng Xiaorong. Her long sword made a series of sword sparks, like plum blossoms scattering towards Feng Xiaorong. Feng Xiaorong pouted in disdain. Shu Qingdai, you haven't improved at all. The long sword on his waist turned into a flash of light and collided with the long sword. Ding! The long sword was deflected, and the long sword followed the momentum. The tip of the sword instantly reached between her eyebrows. He was a full-fledged, innate master, and he was born with extraordinary strength, so he gained the upper hand with just one strike. Shu Qingye's feet slipped. She turned and dodged the attack. Her long sword deflected the force and stabbed at Feng Xiaorong from a strange angle, forcing him to dodge. Feng Xiaorong held his sword horizontally in front of his chest. Ding! The long sword was deflected again. Shu Qingdai groaned in her heart. It had been 2 years. Feng Xiaorong's strength was stronger, and his cultivation level was higher. She was no match for him. If she could hold on for a little longer and exhaust his energy, Sister Du and Du Feng would have a higher chance of winning. Feng Xiaorong laughed coldly. After seeing through Shu Qingye's plan, his long sword suddenly sped up. The flash of the sword turned into a shadow, completely enveloping Shu Qingdai. There was no way for her to escape. Shu Qingdai had no other choice but to block the attack. Ding, 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 ding. A series of metal clashing sounds were heard. Suddenly, the long sword fell from her hand. Feng Xiaorong held his sword horizontally and took a step back. He pouted in disdain. You really haven't improved at all. He did not want to kill her so soon. He wanted to have some fun with her. Such a beautiful body. If he did not play with her to his heart's content before killing her, it would be a waste. Chu Li slowly stepped forward, holding his sword. Who are you? Feng Xiaorong looked at him with disdain. Tell me your name. I don't kill nameless people. He could not bear to kill Shu Qingdai and the little beauty, but this annoying man in front of him, of course, he had to kill him. Chu Li said, Du Feng, if you scram now, I can spare your life. Feng Xiaorong said. Chu Li smiled. I won't spare your life. How arrogant. Feng Xiaorong said coldly. You're the one who killed my brother, aren't you? Chu Li shook his head. It's her. He pointed at Su Ru. Feng Xiaorong frowned and looked at Su Ru. He looked at her from head to toe. This little beauty has such martial arts. It'll be more fun to play with her. All right, I'll send you on your way. Attack! Chu Li shouted. Watch out! He took a step forward and stood in front of Feng Xiaorong. The flash of the sword on his waist disappeared. Swish! The head was separated from the neck. Blood spurted a meter high. The sound was clear. Bang! Feng Xiaorong's head fell to the ground. Ah! Shu Qingdai screamed and took a step back. Su Ru was shocked too. Chu Li looked down at Feng Xiaorong's shocked head and sighed. What a pity! Shu Qingdia's eyes widened in disbelief. Chu Li turned his head and said, Do you want to bring his head as well? Of course. Shu Qingdai tried to cheer herself up. Brother Du, you killed Feng Xiaorong? Isn't this Feng Xiaorong? Chu Li asked. There was no murderous aura around him. He was calm and peaceful, as if he had just chopped a piece of wood. It's him. Shu Qingdai opened her eyes wide and looked at the head on the ground. I just didn't expect. She shook her head as she spoke. A perfected innate master who was halfway to becoming a grandmaster was killed by a single slash. She thought that it would be a fierce battle, and Chu Li would be defeated in the end. The three of them would still be killed by Feng Xiaorong even if they worked together. She really did not expect that Feng Xiaorong, who was known as the youth champion, could not even withstand a single slash from Chu Li. Chu Li reached out and picked up Feng Xiaorong's long blade. It was flawless and shiny. The cold aura it exuded was almost tangible. He smiled and said, This blade is not bad. He untied the original long blade, removed the scabbard from Feng Xiaorong's waist, and tied it to his own waist. He put the shiny long blade back into the scabbard and stood still with his hand on the blade. He took a few more steps to feel the weight and length of the long blade. Finally, he nodded in satisfaction and smiled. At this moment, Shu Qingdai was completely awake. Su Ru fanned her nose. Big brother, let's go. Okay, Chu Li said. He opened the box and picked up the long blade. Feng Xiaorong's head fell into the box. He closed the box and put it aside. He searched their bodies and found some banknotes and firewood. He stuffed the banknotes into his pocket and lit the room on fire with the firewood. He threw the two headless bodies into the fire and turned his head. Let's go. Feng Xiaohua wanted to enjoy himself to the fullest. He did not want others to hear the women's screams. The house had its own entrance and courtyard. It was far away from the surrounding area, so the fire would not burn the neighboring houses. Chapter 244. P.S. I really put my life on the line. Those of you who still have monthly votes, please vote for me. Those who don't have monthly votes, please vote for me tomorrow. I will continue to work hard. Shu Qingdai shook her head. You seem very familiar with what you did. Chu Li smiled. I am the great thief. Shu Qingdai pursed her lips and smiled. You're really amazing. The three of them fluttered out of the house and left the town. It was a smooth journey, and they returned to the snow lunar pavilion without any problems. A group of people was gathered at the entrance of the valley, staring at them with wide eyes. Sister Shu, Junior Sister Du. Yang Lingfeng rushed ahead of her and ran over. Are you hurt? Shu Qingdai asked. Why are you all here? Is Feng dead? Yang Lingfeng asked anxiously. Shu Qingdai smiled. Sister Du killed him with her own hands. Sister Du. Yang Lingfeng's eyes widened. Then he yelled, He's really dead. The heads are in the box. You can take a look, Shu Qingdai said. Chu Li passed the box to Yang Lingfeng. Yang Lingfeng took it, and Zhao Feihu and the others gathered around. Let's go in first. Don't block the way, Shu Qingdai said. Let's go in and take a look. Everyone crowded around Yang Lingfeng and entered the valley, staring at the box. When they reached the lake, they could no longer hold themselves back, and all of them urged Yang Lingfeng to open the box. Yang Lingfeng was also excited, and he opened the box. Two greenish severed heads appeared in front of everyone, emitting a faint chill. Chu Li used the Crescent Cryptic's inner energy to freeze the two heads, not letting them smell or bleed, just like a frozen pig's head. Ha ha, it's really Feng Xiaohua. Yang Lingfeng grabbed the hair of the head and raised it up high. Chu Li looked at the crowd cheering excitedly, then slowly retreated and returned to Suru's waterside pavilion. Everyone was busy looking at the two heads. No one paid attention to him. Chu Li sat in the waterside pavilion, listening to the cheers coming from outside, and let out a satisfied sigh. His efforts were not in vain. Suru finally took a solid step forward, and she could protect herself, and her relationship with her fellow faction members would also become better. However, killing this Feng Xiaorong would definitely cause trouble. A perfected innate master who had gone into isolated cultivation for a year. The Green Hill was the same as the Snow Lunar Pavilion. They both had the surpassing state, and it was very likely that they would become grandmasters in the future. Moreover, Feng Xiaohua was also a grandmaster in the future. Losing two grandmaster seeds in one go, anyone would be furious and indignant. The Green Hill would not let it go so easily. The sunset dyed the surface of the lake red, and the interior of the house was also reflected in a rose color. Chu Li held a book and quietly flipped through it. He was leisurely, and his heart was exceptionally calm. Suru and Shu Qingdai arrived at the waterside pavilion. Everyone is very grateful to you. Suru smiled excitedly. Shu Qingdai quickly nodded and stared at him excitedly. Chu Li put down the book and stretched. He smiled and said, I'm really grateful to you. As for me, I'll leave tomorrow. Leave? Suru and Shu Qingdai screamed at the same time. Chu Li said, I've gotten myself into big trouble. If I don't leave now, I'm afraid I'll put Snow Lunar Pavilion in a difficult position. Are you talking about Feng Xiaorong? Shu Qingdai asked. Chu Li smiled and said, the Green Hill will force Snow Lunar Pavilion to hand him over. Instead of putting your faction in a difficult position, it's better to just leave. Humph, in their dreams. Shu Qingdai sneered and said, Brother Du, don't worry and stay here. Master, and the others will not care about those old fellas from the Green Hill. Chu Li said, I've put the elders in a difficult position. Why bother? Brother Du, do you think we're afraid of the Green Hill? Shu Qingdai said, they have 5 grandmasters, and so do we. If we fight, we don't even know who will win. This time, the balance between the two factions has been broken. I'm just worried that they'll play dirty, Chu Li said. Shu Qingdai said, Brother Du, don't worry and stay here. Don't be in a hurry to leave. No one can touch you here. Su Ru said, if you leave now, Master and the others will be angry. If word gets out, people will think that Snow Lunar Pavilion is afraid of the Green Hill. All right, I'll stay for a few days. Chu Li smiled. Of course, he did not want to leave. He always hoped that Shao Qi would suddenly come out of seclusion and meet him. Especially if news of this incident were to spread, the two of them might come out of seclusion earlier. As he thought about this, his smile became even brighter. Shu Qingdai took a wooden stool and sat opposite Chu Li. Su Ru went to light the palace lantern. The room became brighter. Under the light, the two women looked even more beautiful. When they looked at each other, it was enough to make people's hearts race. Brother Du, can I ask what your identity is? Shu Qingdai asked, are you an innate master or a grandmaster? Chu Li said, let's not talk about it. No matter what I do, I'm still Du Qiu's big brother and Du Xia's fiancé. I won't hurt them. You're a grandmaster, right? Shu Qingdai asked. Chu Li hesitated for a while and slowly nodded. Shu Qingdai frowned and thought. In the martial arts world of the great Qi dynasty, there were not many grandmasters. Young grandmasters were even fewer. Chu Li said, I'm a nobody. If it wasn't for Du Qiu, I wouldn't have shown my true strength. Why? Shu Qingdai did not understand. Chu Li sighed. There are some difficulties that I can't let others know. All right, then I won't ask any more. Shu Qingdai knew that if she continued to ask, she would only annoy him. His tone of voice and his melancholy gaze made her reluctant to ask any more. We're having a big banquet tonight. Shu Qingdai stood up. Brother Du, you must come. Chu Li said, I don't like to join in the fun. Forget it. Shu Qingdai frowned and looked at him unhappily. Chu Li said, Du Qiu is enough. Sister Shu, big brother really doesn't like this kind of scene. Su Ru quickly said. Shu Qingdai sighed. Helplessly, she rolled her eyes at him and left. Su Ru said, You really don't want to go? What do you think? Chu Li said. Su Ru nodded lightly. Although Chu Li had changed his appearance, once he was drunk, his actions would be exposed, and it would be troublesome. She frowned and said, I feel that there's something fishy about Feng Yu's last move. What's fishy? Chu Li felt a little guilty. Su Ru stared at him. He suddenly slowed down, and he wasn't injured. How did that happen? It gave me an opportunity. Chu Li said, I didn't notice that. Maybe it's because I was too far away. Su Ru did not notice anything. She scoffed. Chu Li secretly let out a sigh of relief. He really did not want Su Ru to know that he secretly helped her. The ecstasy will eventually pass. 2 days later, Snow Lunar Pavilion calmed down. There was an order from the higher-ups. The disciples of the valley were still not allowed to leave the valley. They all understood the meaning of this order. They were afraid that the Green Hill would get angry and take revenge on them. They stayed in the valley and did not leave. They did not feel wronged at all. Instead, they were happy. They wanted to piss off the people from the Green Hill. Without Feng Xiaohua, the disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion felt like they had moved a mountain. The world became wider. The martial arts world was so big that they could go anywhere they wanted. Chu Li spent most of his time in Su Ru's house reading. Snow Lunar Pavilion had a strong background. There were many books that Chu Li had never read before. Su Ru even asked Shu Qingdai to help her find 2 books on formations. Chu Li was very interested in studying them. That afternoon, Chu Li was sitting in the gazebo on the lake reading. The breeze was gentle, and it was quiet and peaceful. The disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion in the valley glanced at him from time to time. They were very envious of his good fortune. He could sit in the gazebo and read. This was not something that a normal male disciple could enjoy. Su Ru, dressed in a light green gown, walked over. The people from the Green Hill are here. She was in high spirits, and her face was radiant. After killing Feng Xiaohua, she had undergone a complete transformation. It was as if she had become a different person. The relationship between the two had undergone an inexplicable change. Chapter 245. P.S. Here's the May 1st update. Don't go and play after reading it. Remember to vote for the monthly ticket first. Now you can enjoy double the monthly ticket for the 5/15 Fan Festival. You can also watch other events with red packets. Chuli was calm and did not let go of the book. This was expected. Su Ru snatched his book and said, "Two old men from Green Hill are grandmasters. They must be here to force Masters Senior to hand over the people." Chuli said, "They are just two grandmasters." Su Ru thought about it and returned the book to him. She sat opposite him. "Will they hand over the people?" "With their intelligence, yes, they will." Chuli put down the book and put a snack into his mouth. It melted in his mouth, soft and smooth. They knew that he was a grandmaster and was not afraid of the masters from Green Hill. If it was him, he would take the opportunity to plot against Green Hill. He just did not know if the previous generation of Snow Lunar Pavilion had the same idea. Su Ru said, "Everyone admires you and wants to learn from your swordsmanship." Chuli smiled. "I was just bullying people based on my level. What's there to learn from?" He was fast and strong. He used the heart technique of the Eternity Blade and used the long knife as a flying knife to kill Feng Xiaorong in one hit. This was the swordsmanship that killed Feng Xiaorong. As for the swordsmanship that he was practicing now, it was a technique he found in his mind, Chaos Ring Blade. Chaos Ring Blade was similar to the Tai Chi blade of the future. It was different from the Eternity Blade. It was continuous and flexible, using the chaotic ring saber technique, and suddenly using the life-risking saber technique would be the best. "If you say this, everyone will think that you are cold." Su Ru smiled. "Sister Su also wants you to spar with them. She wants to cool them down." Chuli said. Su Ru had a firm foothold. He could now suppress everyone without hesitation. He did not have to suffer anymore. He could also see that the disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion were overjoyed. It was as if they were suddenly liberated and free. It was dangerous to think like this in the martial arts world. He needed to calm down. Su Ru nodded. "Sister Su is afraid that you will not agree." "All right, I agree." Chuli said. "Then let's go now." Su Ru said excitedly. "Open their eyes." She also felt that everyone was too optimistic. With the deaths of Feng Xiaohua and Feng Xiaorong, would the Green Hill no longer have any experts? The two left the snowy lake, passed through the dense forest, and arrived at the training field. The noon sun shone on the martial arts field. Everyone was training in full swing. The east side was occupied by women, while the west side was occupied by men. Seeing Chuli following Su Ru over, the crowd slowly gathered around them. Yang Lingfeng came forward and laughed. "Brother, do come. Show us your saber skills." Chuli smiled. "Do you really want to embarrass yourself?" "Brother Du, you went too far, just now." Yang Lingfeng shouted. "You tricked us." Chuli gave a fist salute to everyone to express his apology. Shu Qingdai said, "Brother Du, let's spar for a bit. Let's broaden their horizons." Chuli said, "That's fine too. Let's spar then." "Everyone, please correct me." Shu Qingdai rolled her eyes at him, then pulled out her sword and thrust it forward. Chuli unsheathed his long blade and slowly drew a half-arc in the air. The power of the sword was deflected. She took a step forward and exerted more force. He swung his blade and drew several arcs in the air. It was as if a crescent moon had fallen in front of him. The first crescent moon, the last crescent moon, the first crescent moon, and the last crescent moon were shining brightly. Xu Qingdia's long blade would always collide with one of the crescent moons. Her power was deflected, and she lost all of her strength. Xu Qingdai thrust her sword more than 50 times in one breath. None of her swords could get close to Chu Li. They were all deflected by the flash of the blade. The seemingly slow blade technique was impenetrable. The sharp long blade could not pierce through. The crowd was amazed. Chu Li's blade technique was very strange. Chu Li was calm and collected, as if he was playing with his blade. Xu Qingdai used all of her strength to swing her sword, but it was all in vain. The relaxed and serious expressions on their faces formed a strong and distinct contrast. Xu Qingdai scoffed, "Brother Yang, let's attack together." Yang Lingfeng was already itching to fight. He laughed out loud. "I'm coming. TSK." He pulled out his sword and thrust it forward like a poisonous snake. Chu Li was still leisurely. He did not change his stance. When the tip of the sword was about to reach Chu Li, a crescent moon appeared in front of the sword. Yang Lingfeng felt as if his sword had stabbed into a swamp. He could not exert any force at all. It felt empty and uncomfortable. It was as if he had stepped on thin air. He could not help but want to step back. He did not believe it, so he changed his sword technique. It was unpredictable, and he tried to find an opening to attack. However, the tip of the sword was blocked by the flash of the blade every time. The sword wanted to fly away from his hand. He was shocked. He quickly tightened his grip on the sword. If he tightened his grip too much, it would become a dead sword. It would lose its spirituality. The essence of a sword technique lies in its spirituality. Without spirituality, it would be no different from a dead snake. Yang Lingfeng's sword force dimmed. The crescent moon formed by Chu Li's flash of the blade changed. It became more and more magnetic. The long blade was restless, and it wanted to fly away. "This won't do. Brother Zhao, you should attack together." Yang Lingfeng screamed. Zhao Feihu shook his head. He was proud of his identity. How could he attack together with the others? "What are you waiting for? Hurry up." Xu Qingdai scoffed. She struggled with all her might. It was as if she was a bug in a spider's web. She was trapped everywhere. Her struggles were getting weaker and weaker. She could not hold on for much longer. Zhao Feihu sighed helplessly. He pulled out his sword and stabbed it lightly. He only wanted to put on a show. When the long blade touched the flash of the blade, his body leaned forward. He was almost pulled away. He quickly steadied himself. His face was solemn. If the three of them attacked together and were still defeated, they would be too ashamed to face anyone. "Hey!" he shouted. He channeled his inner energy into his sword. The flash of the blade suddenly increased and turned into a sky full of flashes of light that enveloped Chu Li. Chu Li's sword force did not change. He was still calm and relaxed. He ignored the flashes of light that filled the sky. When the flashes of light got close to Chu Li, they dimmed and disappeared. A long sword appeared. He held the long sword tightly. The flash of the blade was strangely magnetic. Chu Li smiled. "Everyone, let's attack together. Everyone, let's attack together." Yang Lingfeng screamed. Then he screamed again. The long sword finally left his hand. He leaned back and almost fell. He panted and stood with his hands on his waist. "Let's go. Let's go." Everyone thought that it was interesting. They all raised their swords and stabbed. Chu Li's sword force was still calm and relaxed. Crescent moons hung in front of him, blocking the swords from all directions. When their long swords touched the flash of the blade, They felt that they could not control themselves. A turbulent force surged from the blade. They felt as if they were in the middle of a raging sea. They could not control themselves. They staggered as if they were drunk. Soon, they could not hold their long swords anymore. Ding, 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 ding. A clear sound was heard. All the long swords were sent flying and fell to the ground. Chu Li calmly sheathed his blade and smiled at the crowd. What kind of sword technique is this? Shu Qingdai rubbed her wrist. Her eyes were bright. The crowd stared at him curiously. Chaos ring blade technique. Chu Li smiled. How's the power? Yang Lingfeng shouted. Brother Du, you're bullying us with your inner energy. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. I suppressed my inner energy. I borrowed your strength. This is the beauty of Chaos Ring Blade technique. Is there really such an exquisite sword technique? Shu Qingdai asked. Chu Li said, everyone's sword technique is also top-notch. As long as you're familiar with it, it won't lose to Chaos Ring Blade technique. You guys don't even know it. Chu Li smiled. Then let's spar again. I'll use your sword technique. Sure. Shu Qingdai smiled. I'd like to see how much you know about our sword technique. At the tallest palace in the ravine, Lunar Lake Palace, the atmosphere was tense. The three grand elders of Snow Lunar Pavilion, Li Qingluo, Jiang Chunyue, and Wang Wenxi were meeting with the two grand elders of Green Hill, Feng Qiliang and Zhou Xiqing. They each took a seat. The main seat in the middle was empty. Why don't you see pavilion leader Situ? Feng Qiliang was a handsome middle-aged man. His face was gloomy. He said coldly, Is this how Snow Lunar Pavilion treats its guests? Chapter 246. P.S. Don't rush to play after reading it. Remember to vote for the monthly votes first. Now Qidian's 515 Fan Festival. You can enjoy double the monthly votes. You can also take a look at the other activities. Li Qingluo and Jiang Chunyue were beautiful like young girls. If others did not know their identity, they would think that they were in their 20s. As elders of the Snow Lunar Pavilion, they were already in their 40s. Wang Wenxi, who was sitting beside them, was a handsome middle-aged man. He seemed to be their elder. Beside Feng Qiliang was a middle-aged man who did not care about his appearance. He tried to keep a straight face, but he could not hide his friendliness. The pavilion leader has something to do. He is not in the valley. Li Qingluo glanced at Feng Qiliang. Elder Feng, if you have something to say to the pavilion leader, I can help you pass the message. She had a round face and big eyes. She was very charming. Her big round eyes were especially seductive. Just a glance was enough to make one's heart flutter. Humph, not in the valley. Feng Qiliang laughed coldly. Is he really not in the valley, or is he avoiding us? What a joke. Why would the pavilion leader avoid us? Li Qingluo pouted her red lips. Feng Qiliang scoffed. Of course he is guilty. What do we have to be guilty of? Li Qingluo said. But you guys, you have taught two evil people. If you don't handle it well, it will ruin your Green Hill faction. I am really worried about you guys. You are so short-sighted. Humph, Li Qingluo, are you talking about the brothers Xiaohua and Xiaorong? Of course, it's those two bad guys. They died in the hands of the Snow Lunar Pavilion. You guys must be very proud. This is a grudge between the younger generation. Let them be, let them be, let them be. How many disciples of the Green Hill faction and the Snow Lunar Pavilion have died before? Well said. Feng Qiliang said coldly. Xiaorong was a perfected innate master, but he was killed. What a pity. Li Qingluo shook her head and sighed. It's good that he died. Li Qingluo. Feng Qiliang glared at her. Don't cross the line. Cross what line? Li Qingluo glanced at him and laughed coldly. Oh, only your disciples are allowed to kill my disciples, but my disciples are not allowed to kill yours? This world belongs to the Green Hill. Why should we do as you wish? Li Qingluo, don't be unreasonable. I'm talking about Xiaorong. Feng Qiliang snorted angrily. He's a perfected Xiantian. Unless you guys make a move, who can kill him? You're breaking the rules. Kill him. Li Qingluo giggled. I say, old monster Feng, have you lost your mind? It must be because you guys are jealous that we, the Green Hill faction, have so many talents that we have to suppress you guys. That's why you guys are so vicious. You're really measuring the heart of a gentleman with your own mean measure. In my opinion, only you would have such a despicable mind. Li Qingluo laughed coldly. We're going to make our move. Why would you wait until now? You guys can't take it anymore. Feng Qiliang sneered and said, I want to question Pavilion Master Sidhu face to face. Is she going to break the rules set by our ancestors? Li Qingluo snorted. You really don't know who killed Feng Xiaorong? Not just Xiaorong. Even Xiaohua can't be killed by you young disciples. Feng Qiliang laughed coldly. It must be you guys. Wang Wensi coughed lightly and said gently, Brother Feng, you're mistaken. Feng Xiaohua was really killed by a disciple from my faction. He's Senior Shun's disciple. Sheninghu's disciple? Feng Qiliang frowned and scoffed. Shen Jing's martial arts are not as good as Xu Qingdie's, who we can't kill Xiaohua either. Senior Shen took in 2 unofficial disciples a few years ago outside the valley. Wang Wensi shook his head and sighed. They're both martial arts geniuses. One of them is already a perfected Xiantian. The other one is also an innate Xiantian. He's the one who killed Feng Xiaohua. Feng Qiliang was silent. He was thinking about Shen Yinghu. She was cunning, smart, and full of tricks. She could do such a thing. She didn't take in the most outstanding disciples into the valley and let them hide in the dark. There was no danger of them dying. She ignored all external affairs and focused on training. Naturally, she would improve rapidly and become a perfected Xiantian early on. Sheninghu. Feng Qiliang gritted his teeth and scoffed. Wang Wensi said, Senior Shun and Junior Shun's disciples' cultivation is profound, but her experience is too poor. She was hurt by Feng Xiaohua last time. She was tortured and humiliated. Her beautiful face was scratched. After she recovered, she killed Feng Xiaohua out of anger. Sigh. Feng Xiaohua asked for it. His actions are already evil. As her master, you don't control her. Once she becomes an elder, your Green Hill faction is done for. Shut up, Feng Qiliang shouted coldly. I know my disciples well, but now I can't control them even if I want to. Snow Lunar Pavilion is so scheming. Sheninghu is so scheming. Wang Wensi stroked his beard and smiled. What about Xiaorong? Feng Qiliang scoffed. Was he killed by Shen Yinghu's other disciple? She's in isolation with Senior Shen. The one who killed Feng Xiaorong is Du Qiu's elder brother, Du Feng. Wang Wensi smiled lightly. He's considered half a disciple of Snow Lunar Pavilion. He's currently in our valley. Feng Qiliang frowned. Du Feng? Senior Shun's 2 disciples are sisters, Du Xia and Du Qiu. The one who killed Feng Xiaohua is Du Qiu. Wang Wensi explained patiently. Du Feng is Du Qiu's cousin. He's also Du Xia's proposed husband. Brother Feng, do you understand? The Du family, Feng Qiliang said coldly. How about this? Hand over Du Feng and I'll write off Xiaohua and Xiaorong's deaths. Wang Wensi smiled and spread his hands. Feng Qiliang turned and stared. Jiang Chunyue, you can make the decision. Are you going to hand him over or not? No, Jiang Chunyue said lightly. She had arched eyebrows and almond-shaped eyes. She was gentle but firm when she spoke. Good, good. Feng Qiliang laughed coldly. I hope your disciples don't leave the valley. Feng, you better think carefully. Jiang Chunyue's almond-shaped eyes were murderous. Feng Qiliang took a deep breath. His expression was uncertain. After a while, he scoffed. If you hand over Du Feng, I'll give you an emerald sky pill. Emerald sky pill? Jiang Chunwei frowned. The emerald sky pill was the most precious pill in the Green Hill. No matter how serious the injury was, it would heal in 2 hours. Sister Shun's injury was very serious. It could become a chronic illness that could not be healed. If she had the emerald sky pill, she could come out of seclusion immediately. Is my sincerity enough? Feng Qiliang said coldly. This emerald sky pill is my quota. If you hand over Du Feng, I'll give it to you. You want to kill Du Feng? Jiang Chunwei scoffed. Feng Qiliang's eyes brightened. He scoffed, not necessarily. If he's willing to lower his head and submit to the Green Hill, not only will he be innocent, we'll give him the best treatment, and even make him an elder. Jiang Chunwei turned and looked at Li Qingluo and Wang Wenxi. Li Qingluo said lightly, 3 emerald sky pills. Li Qingluo, are you crazy? Feng Qiliang shouted angrily. Li Qingluo said, 3 emerald sky pills, or you can get lost. Wang Wenxi sighed. Brother Feng, if you want to kill Du Feng, no matter how many emerald sky pills you give us, we won't agree to it. As for enlisting him, we're not 3-year-old children. Why would we believe that? There was only one thing that could make Feng Qiliang give up on enlisting Du Feng, and that was the relationship between Du Feng, Du Xia, and Du Qiu. Miss Li, Miss Jiang, Brother Wang, 3 emerald sky pills is really too much. We really don't have any. Zhou Ziqing finally spoke. Even if you ask me, we only have 2 pills. We can't give more. Feng Qiliang scoffed. How about this? Call this Du Feng over. As long as he can withstand 3 of my palms, I'll forget about this and give you 2 emerald sky pills. Chapter 247. P.S. Here's the first update. Don't rush to play after reading it. Remember to vote for the monthly votes first. Now, Qijian's 515 Fan Festival will give you double the monthly votes. You can also take a look at the other activities. P.S. I'm too late. I'm really sorry I stayed up until midnight to look at the monthly votes, plus the tiredness from the continuous outbursts. I took a nap in the morning and ended up oversleeping. I only finished 2 updates now. To express my apologies, I'll try to add another update in the next 2 days. 3 palms. Li Qingluo laughed coldly. Feng Qiliang, do you take us for fools? You're a grandmaster. Du Feng can't even take 1 palm. You want to kill him in front of us, right? I only used 3 palms. Feng Qiliang said impatiently. If I really wanted to kill him, 1 palm would have been enough. Why 3 palms? Stop bragging, Li Qingluo said impatiently. You're already so old. Why are you still so narrow-minded? Arguing with a junior. Why didn't I call Feng Xiaorong in front of me and give him 3 palms? Feng Qiliang frowned. Li Qingluo, don't be unreasonable. This is not the same thing if he can kill Xiaorong. He's definitely not ordinary. He can't even take 3 palms? He's also your disciple. Why are you protecting him? Does he have some kind of relationship with you? Li Qingluo? Feng, you're bullshitting. Li Qingluo's face suddenly turned red. She scolded, You're full of filth. Li Qingluo, you're guilty. T. Feng Xiaorong can take 3 palms from you? Li Qingluo quickly changed the topic. Even if he can't, he won't die. Feng Qiliang scoffed. Snow Lunar Pavilion is benevolent, then find 2 emerald sky pills. 1 is prepared for him. No matter how serious the injury, he won't die after taking it. Feng Qiliang, I've changed my mind. Li Qingluo laughed coldly. You want us to hand Du Feng over? Dream on. All right, Then I'll wait outside the valley. He's not your disciple. He can't always stay in the valley, right? Feng Qiliang said coldly. There'll be a time when he leaves the valley, right? Then you can wait. Li Qingluo smiled and said, we definitely won't chase him away. After all, his fiancée is still in seclusion. If the two of them get married and live in the valley, that would be the best. Wang Wensi coughed lightly, but by that time, Du Xia will already be a grandmaster. Therefore, Brother Feng, let me give you a piece of advice. If you really kill Du Feng, what will happen to Du Xia? Who knows when she'll become a grandmaster? She's not one yet. Feng Qiliang coldly snorted. He did not really care. So, what if he was a grandmaster? He was a grandmaster himself, so he was not afraid of a young junior. Wang Wensi shook her head. You also know that young people tend to be impulsive. Seeing that her husband was killed, she might not necessarily look for you for revenge, but I'm afraid that she would go against the Green Hill. Speaking of this, he sighed. Of course we have to stop her. We can't let her break the rules, but once a woman is impulsive, I'm afraid we may not be able to stop her. Junior brother Wang. Li Qingluo glared at him. Wang Wensi smiled embarrassedly, then shook her head at Feng Qiliang. If that's the case, let's all take a step back. Zhou Ziqing smiled and raised his hand, waving it. How about one palm? Humph, I'll listen to you. Feng Qiliang turned to look at the three of them. If he can't even take one palm, then he might as well die. Li Qingluo and the other two looked at each other. Feng Qiliang quickly said, Don't forget about the Emerald Sky Pills. If he's injured, he won't die. Then 3 Emerald Sky Pills. Li Qingluo scoffed. Li Qingluo, don't go overboard. Feng Qiliang's face turned red, and he said angrily, You're asking for too much. Li Qingluo looked at him arrogantly. Do you agree or not? Jiang Chunyue and Wang Wensi shook their heads and sighed, as if they could not do anything. Zhou Ziqing quickly said, Fine, 3 pills it is. Luckily, I asked Senior Brother Meng for one beforehand. Also, it's not that Du Feng can only take 1 palm from you. It's the 2 of you. Li Qingluo scoffed. Of course. Zhou Ziqing quickly stopped Feng Qiliang, who was about to scold her. Feng Qiliang gritted his teeth. Li Qingluo, don't you fall into my hands. Feng Qiliang, you're only good at talking, so what if I fall into your hands? Li Qingluo said with disdain. Your 2 disciples learned the evil arts from you. You're just an old bastard who deserves to die. Feng Qiliang smiled coldly and turned his head away to ignore her. Li Qingluo's proud chest heaved up and down violently. She glared at him with hatred, wanting to tear him apart. Like teacher, like disciple. Many of her fellow disciples had died at Feng Qiliang's hands, and Li Qingluo had also killed many of Feng Qiliang's fellow disciples. The blood feud between the 2 factions could not be resolved, and it was getting deeper and deeper. In the martial arts field, Chu Li took the long sword from Shu Qingdai and was about to practice his sword technique. A girl in green fluttered over and said, Young Hero Du, Elder Li, Elder Jiang, Elder Wang, please. Oh, what's the matter? Chu Li smiled. The girl smiled and shook her head. Shu Qingdai said, Sister Chen, is it because of the Green Hill faction? Sister Su, Feng Qiliang, and Zhou Ziqing from the Green Hill faction are here. The girl said, They want to see young Hero Du. I'll go with them, Su Ru quickly said. Shu Qingdai said, At the Lunar Lake Palace, right? Yes, the girl nodded. All right, I'll bring you there, Shu Qingdai said. She brought Chu Li and Su Ru to the depths of the valley. Zhao Feihu and the others wanted to follow, but Shu Qingdai waved her hand and chased them away. They would only be laughed at by the people from the Green Hill faction. Chu Li and the other 3 arrived at the Lunar Lake Palace on the mountain wall. Master Li, Master Wang, Master, Shu Qingdai called out from outside the palace. When Jiang Chuanyue's voice came from inside, they walked in. Chu Li glanced at everyone in the palace. He had already seen everyone through the omniscient mirror, especially Feng Qiliang and Zhou Ziqing. Your Du Feng? Feng Qiliang stared at Chu Li coldly, but his gaze fell on Su Ru's face. He looked at her from head to toe with a strange gaze. Chu Li's face darkened. Feng Qiliang's mind was filled with dirty thoughts. Just like his disciple, he wanted to capture Suru back and enjoy her. He was extremely excited as he shouted in admiration. After so many years, he finally saw a little beauty that could make him so impulsive. Chu Li's heart was filled with murderous intent, but his expression did not change. He closed fist saluted and smiled. Greetings, Master Li, Master Jiang, Master Wang, and these two, Li Qingluo and the other two, were also looking at him. They heard from Shu Qingdai that he was a grandmaster, but they had never seen him before. This was the first time they saw him. He was indeed handsome, but looking at his cultivation level, they could not tell that he was a grandmaster. Your Du Feng? Feng Qiliang said angrily. Chu Li finally looked at him. That's me. You killed Feng Shaorong? Yes. Good, good. Feng Qiliang was so angry that he laughed. He was very angry at Chu Li's arrogance and disrespect. He was jealous that he was standing beside Su Ru, so he decided to kill him. Since he was already dead, there was nothing Li Qingluo and the others could do. Wang Wenxi told him about the previous decision and finally said, Du Feng, let's end this with one strike. Do you agree? If you agree, I'll give you 2 Emerald Sky Pills. If you don't, let them leave. Li Qingluo said, Du Feng, if you refuse, I can guarantee that you'll be fine. He won't dare to come in. End this with one strike. Sure. Chu Li closed fist saluted and smiled. Thank you for your kindness. Master Li, I would also like to experience Master Feng's martial arts. It's the father's fault for not teaching his son well. He deserves to die as a father for not teaching his son well. He. Li Qingluo laughed and slapped the armrest of the chair. Good, I like your character. Feng Xiaohua and Feng Shaorong were Feng Qiliang's illegitimate children. This was an open secret between the two factions. Not many people dared to mention it, but Chu Li did not hesitate to pull this cover up. She was very happy. You're asking for it. Feng Qiliang's face turned red. Chu Li said, Go ahead. Feng Qiliang put away his anger and scoffed. He casually threw out a palm strike. You're really an ignorant mountain man with no manners. His palm energy flew towards Chu Li along with his words. Chu Li made a move almost at the same time as him. He lightly pointed a finger. Chapter 248. P.S. Don't rush to play after you've finished reading. Remember to vote for the monthly vote. Now, Chidian's 515 Fan Festival will give you double the monthly vote. You can also take a look at the other activities. Bam! Tisk! 2 sounds were heard almost at the same time. Bam! Chu Li's body suddenly flashed with a golden light. It was as if he was hit by a galloping horse. His body flew backward, took a few steps in the air, and landed on the ground lightly. The golden light dissipated, and the golden light on his face slowly faded. Finally, it completely entered his skin. Tisk! With a light whistle. Feng Qiliang tried to avoid it, but was still hit in the shoulder by the finger force. His body froze, and he could not move. Sentient menace. Everyone's expression changed slightly. Of course, they knew about the supreme antique study of the Tempest Temple. Brother Feng! Brother Feng! Zhou Ziqing quickly reached out and shouted. He saw that Feng Qiliang was not moving, as if his acupuncture points were sealed. He reached out and felt that something was wrong. He had stopped breathing. Feng Qiliang slowly leaned back. Zhou Ziqing supported him and slowly put him down. After a careful examination, his heart was cut off and his life was gone. Even the Emerald Sky Pill was useless. He shook his head and looked at Chu Li with a gloomy face. Chu Li looked at him calmly. Zhou Ziqing scoffed. So this is the spear finger strike? Chu Li smiled faintly, but did not say anything. Li Qingluo and the other two let out a long sigh of relief. Their tense bodies relaxed, and the gathered inner energy dispersed. They were just about to rescue him, but they were one step too late. Sentient menace, spear finger strike. Chu Li's identity was obvious. A disciple of the Tempest Temple. No wonder he was so mysterious. He was a grandmaster at such a young age. What a good spear finger strike. Zhou Ziqing took a deep breath. His face was gloomy, and his voice was heavy. He said coldly, Brother Feng did not fall unjustly. They thought that he was a harmless sheep, but he was a tiger in sheep's clothing. He turned his head and said, Miss Li, I want to bring Brother Feng back to the mountain. My condolences. Li Qingluo said, seriously. She was about to burst from laughing and wanted to raise her hands and shout. This old bastard was finally dead, and the heavens finally opened their eyes. Jiang Chunhua said, Zhou Ziqing, I hope that this matter will end here. I said in advance that we are even. The Green Hill is not allowed to pester Du Feng anymore. Of course. Zhou Ziqing clenched his teeth and scoffed. We, the people of Green Hill, always keep our word. We will not make things difficult for Du Feng anymore. The key was Du Feng's identity, a grandmaster from the Tempest Temple. Very good. Jiang Chunhua nodded. Li Qingluo scoffed. Where's the Emerald Sky Pill? Zhou Ziqing glared at her. Li Qingluo raised her snow-white chin and said proudly, You're not going back on your word, are you? Good. Zhou Ziqing gritted his teeth. He nodded fiercely, as expected of Li Qingluo, the Emerald Sky Pill. He took out a white jade bottle and tossed it to Li Qingluo. He then carried Feng Qiliang on his back and walked out. Li Qingluo opened the cork and poured out 3 dark green pills that looked like they were flowing with light. She nodded her head in satisfaction and put them back into the cork. She then tossed them to Chu Li. They're yours, Du Feng. Chu Li smiled and flicked his finger. The white jade bottle then turned to face Li Qingluo. Senior Li, this is a small token of my appreciation. Hee, you little brat, I like you more and more. Li Qingluo pointed at him and took the Emerald Sky Pill. Elder senior sister needed the Emerald Sky Pill, and Du Feng was not an outsider. He would give one to Du Xia and one to Du Qiu. Zhou Ziqing carried Feng Qiliang and disappeared from the Moon Lake Palace. Xu Qingdai was stunned. Grandmasters were different from one another as well. There were high and low cultivation levels. Feng Qiliang was also a genius who entered the Grandmaster's boundary at a young age. His cultivation level was profound. Otherwise, he would have been killed by her master and the others. Her master and the others wanted to kill Feng Qiliang, just like how they wanted to kill Feng Xiaohua. They did not expect that such a troublesome person would be killed by Du Feng in one move. Du Feng closed fists saluted and smiled. Senior Jiang, Senior Wang, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. This, Li Qingluo quickly said. Du Feng, are you a disciple of the Tempest Temple? Chu Li smiled bitterly and sighed. He shook his head. I have my reasons, I can't tell you. All right, we won't ask. Li Qingluo waved her hand and smiled. All right, you can stay in the valley and lie low for a while. The people from the Green Hill Mountain will not dare to do anything to you in the open. They might use underhanded methods. The disciples of the Tempest Temple were not to be underestimated, especially since they were grandmasters. The Green Hill Mountain would not dare to act recklessly. If the Tempest Temple decided to take revenge, the Green Hill Mountain would suffer great losses and decline. Chu Li nodded and closed fist saluted. He left the Moon Lake Palace with Su Ru and Shu Qingdai. Sigh, you killed Feng Qiliang. Shu Qingdai shook her head and sighed. You removed one of the Snow Lunar Pavilion's worries. You're our savior. Miss Su, you're exaggerating. Chu Li looked at Su Ru. If I don't kill that old bastard, I won't be able to rest easy with Du Qiu. That's true. Shu Qingdai understood what he meant. Su Ru's excitement was obvious, but she pretended to be calm. Where did Chu Li learn the spear finger strike? The public house did not have such a secret technique. He learned the sentient menace from Lady Xiao and was able to block Feng Qiliang's palm. It was indeed the Tempest Temple's secret technique. He did not expect the spear finger strike to be so powerful. Chu Li and the other two returned to the martial arts field. Shu Qingdai told them what happened, and the crowd cheered. Shu Qingdai hid the martial arts that Chu Li used and only told them the result. He killed Feng Qiliang in one move, and that was enough for them. Chu Li smiled as he took the long sword. He used 2 moves to spar with Shu Qingdai. He only used 2 moves, and he used the same 2 moves repeatedly. Based on these 2 moves, he developed some new moves. The crowd was amazed. They did not expect the sword techniques that they learned to be so exquisite. In the morning, Chu Li woke up in the building on the mountain wall. He sat on the bed and breathed, using his spiritual energy to cleanse his body. It was an indescribable feeling. Knock, knock. There was a knock on the door. Chu Li said casually, "Come in." Light footsteps slowly walked into the room, bringing with it a faint fragrance. Hearing the familiar footsteps and smelling the familiar fragrance, Chu Li's expression changed. He turned around abruptly. Xiao Qi was in a white dress, standing quietly in front of him. Chu Li jumped off the bed and stood up. Xiao Qi smiled faintly. "Long time no see." Chu Li could not help but smile. "Long time no see." The 2 of them stared at each other. Silence was better than words. Chu Li felt that time had stopped, and so did their surroundings. It was as if the world had stopped. There was only her beautiful face in front of him, and nothing else. The 2 of them stood there quietly for an unknown amount of time. Su Ru ran in and woke the 2 of them up. They turned from statues to living people. "Big sister, big brother, it's time to eat." Su Ru smiled. "Let's go to my place." She saw that Lady Zhao's face was slightly red, but she pretended not to see it. Xiao Qi said, "Let's go to my place." The 3 of them left the building and went to the pavilion on the lake. Along the way, they met many disciples. They all smiled and greeted Xiao Qi, but they looked at Chu Li with strange gazes. Xiao Qi's eyes lit up. She instantly saw through their thoughts. She glanced at Chu Li and knew why they looked at him with strange gazes. Chapter 249. P.S. Here's the May 1st update. Don't rush to play after reading it. Remember to vote for the monthly ticket first. You can enjoy double the monthly ticket for the Qijian 5 15 Fan Festival. You can also watch other events with red packets. Su Ru pursed her lips and glanced at Chu Li. She did not know how the lady would react. The 3 of them walked on the boardwalk on the lake and came to a waterside pavilion that was adjacent to Su Ru's. Su Ru stood at the door and said, "I'll go check the food first," she said, and ran out, leaving only the 2 of them in the waterside pavilion. Faint laughter came From the valley, in the distance, the disciples of Snow Lunar Pavilion were practicing and were in high spirits. Chu Li's swordsmanship demonstration made them discover a new world. They always felt that the swordsmanship of other sects was exquisite, while their own was ordinary. Now, it seemed that it was not the swordsmanship that was bad, but they were not good enough. Chu Li opened the window and found a garden stool to sit on. Shao Qi sat in front of the window. The sun shone on her white, jade-like face. She looked like a beauty carved from white jade, untainted by the world. Chu Li frowned. Injured? Too anxious. Shao Qi shook her head. I heard from Xiao Ru that big brother. Chu Li nodded and looked at her face. He felt that the injury was not light. Did you get injured from fighting with someone? I was guarding Master in isolation. How could I have the chance to fight? How is your master's injury? With the Emerald Sky Pill, she will recover soon. What about you? You need to continue your isolation. Shao Qi glanced at him. I know Song Yuning. She is generous and open-minded. Most importantly, she is kind. She will be a good wife to Big Brother. Unfortunately, she has a bad temper. This is not a big flaw. Shao Qi said, Big Brother can tolerate it. Chu Li nodded. Master Xiao Taiying had many flaws, but also many strengths. He was the most tolerant. He was generous and open. He could tolerate Song Yuning. More importantly, Song Yuning was also a smart woman. She knew when to stop and when to stop. This was a great wisdom. Not every lady had this kind of intelligence. Shao Qi sighed. Chu Li, I'm afraid I will stay bright here eyes for turned away 10 years and looked at the lake. I'll leave the public house to you. Her eyes were brighter than the lake water. Chu Li frowned. Are you hiding something from me? Shao Qi was extraordinarily intelligent. He wanted to use the omniscient and indifferent temperament. Even if Shao Qi was not tainted by the secular world, she would be enraged. But logically it was better than being blinded. It was very easy for her to comprehend the integration of heaven and man. No matter how slow it was, to give up. It would not take 10 years. Actually, it's nothing much. Shao Qi gently shook her head. Put down her hand. It's the heart technique's problem. I'm going into isolated cultivation. I was too impatient. For 10 years and it produced the opposite. Go into isolated cultivation for 10 years. Second eldest sister. Chu Li was surprised. And big brother. Shao Qi nodded. I'll need you to take care of them. Chu Li said, of course. You don't want me to come, right? Chu Li said. Shao Qi rolled her eyes at him. Shao Qi flashed a smile and not be disturbed by external things. Quietly. Only then will you have a chance to reach the Grandmaster's boundary. That's true. Chu Li nodded. But 10 years is too. He shook his head again. 10 years was too long. He felt that he could not endure it. The pain of lovesickness was too unbearable. He was restless, distracted, and absent-minded. He was suffering all the time. That was why he could not wait to come over. If it goes well, he might come out earlier. Shao Qi said, when that time comes, I don't know what will happen to the public house. Will Big Brother be able to hold on? How is second eldest sister living? She gently shook her head. But 10 years is very fast. Fast? Chu Li shook his head and smiled bitterly. Let's not think about this. Tell me about the public house. Shao Qi said, you've schemed against Lu Yurong again. With her personality, she will definitely try her best to get it back. You have to be careful of her. Chu Li said, I have been guarding against her. This time, I plan to go to the Ren public house to take a look and train a few spies. You should plan well. Shao Qi said, her tricks are hard to guard against. It's best to know one step ahead. As the two talked, Suru came in with the dishes. Chu Li wished he could stay in Shao Qi's waterside pavilion. After talking about the public house, they talked about the martial arts world. There were endless things to talk about. Later, when he saw Shao Qi's tired expression, he reluctantly left. Shao Qi was seriously injured and became so weak. He wanted to ask her about it tomorrow. However, with the Emerald Sky Pill, it would not matter if she was injured. She would recover soon. He left the snow lake in the sunset and went to his pavilion. When he was about to read, there was a knock on the door. A young girl in green came in. Master Du, Master Senior, Shen wants to see you. Chu Li followed the young girl back to the lake and came to a waterside pavilion in the middle of the snow lake. This waterside pavilion had 2 floors. The surrounding 5 waterside pavilions were the same. Standing in front of the window on the 2nd floor of the waterside pavilion, one could overlook the surroundings and see everything. The young girl in green went in, and Chu Li followed into the main hall. The main hall was covered with a moon-white carpet. It was bright and soft. In the middle was a purple carpet that made people dare to step on it. A beautiful woman sat on the armchair in the middle. Her face was like a hibiscus. Her charm and innocence were mixed together. It was enough to make men go crazy. She supported her chin and sat quietly on the armchair. When she saw Chu Li come in, she left the armchair and walked out. She waved her hand. "You can leave." The 2 young girls in green retreated gently. "Follow me." She hooked her fair, jade-like fingers. Chu Li followed her out of the waterside pavilion. Her fragrance lingered in his nose. She came to a small pavilion on the lake and sat by the stone table. She gestured for Chu Li to sit down. Chu Li sat opposite her, looking at her from a close distance. He could feel her amazing beauty. Her skin was like jade, and her black and white eyes were clear and bright. It was as if they could absorb people's spirit. The breeze on the lake was gentle, and it felt comfortable on his face. She rested her chin on her hand, her eyes as clear as water, quietly sizing Chu Li up. After a while, she nodded. Chu Li. Chu Li nodded slowly. As Shao Qi's master, it was impossible that she did not know her true identity. "Shao Qi's mother is my sister," Shen Yinghu said. Chu Li suddenly understood. She was Shao Qi's aunt. He must not be afraid. Shen Yinghu sighed. Shao Qi is in trouble now. Chu Li pricked up his ears and listened. She cultivates the regal sword scripture. You know about it, right? Shen Yinghu said. Chu Li nodded. Her mother taught her. It was found in an ancient ruin. It is a real ancient study that can help one become an enlightened master. Shen Yinghu said, but the regal sword scripture is difficult to learn. It is very demanding on one's aptitude. I tried to cultivate it, but I could not find the right path. Shao Qi's aptitude is the most suitable for this scripture. If there are no accidents, she has a 60 to 70% chance of becoming an enlightened master before the age of 30. Chu Li was surprised. He did not expect the regal sword scripture to be so powerful. Shen Yinghu said, unfortunately, she is now trapped in the innate mastery. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Shen Yinghu looked at him. The regal sword scripture focuses on the state of mind. The regal sword scripture forgets emotions. If one cannot be emotionless, then it is not suitable to cultivate this scripture. If one has emotions, then it goes against the regal sword scripture. It is like water and fire cannot coexist. Is it because of me? Chu Li asked. Shen Yinghu nodded slowly. An inexplicable, complicated thought came into Chu Li's mind. Chapter 250. P.S. Here's the May 1st update. Don't rush to play after reading it. Remember to vote for it first. Now you can enjoy double the monthly vote for the 515 Fan Festival. You can also watch other events with red packets. He turned to look at the lake. The breeze was gentle and the water was sparkling. It was not a one-sided love. Shao Qi was also moved by him. This was good news, but he was not happy. Shao Qi has been in pain recently. She has been struggling every day. Shen Yinghu sighed. It's been hard on her. Chu Li asked, why? There are two paths in front of her. Sheninghu looked at him. One is to cut off her feelings. She will immediately become a grandmaster and soon become an enlightened master. The other is to destroy the regal sword scripture and recultivate Snow Lunar Pavilion's heart technique. Once she chooses this path, it means she can no longer return to the public house. She will live as Du Xia and must make a solemn vow before cultivating Snow Lunar Pavilion's heart technique. Chu Li frowned. Shen Yinghu said, cultivating Snow Lunar Pavilion's heart technique and reaching the Grandmaster's boundary is the limit. There is no chance for her to become an enlightened master. Chu Li's expression was solemn. One is the bright path. She can become an enlightened master and support the public house. The other is a winding path. She has no hope of becoming an enlightened master. She can't return to the public house and live like Xiao Yueling. Shen Yinghu said, I don't know why she is hesitating. Chu Li smiled bitterly. To outsiders, there was indeed nothing to hesitate about. The crux is you. Shen Yinghu glanced at him. You are a grand master at such a young age. You are wise enough to move Shaoqi, but she sighed. Chu Li frowned. An enlightened master. Once one became a heavenly deity realm expert, one could move unhindered under the heavens without any misgivings, obtaining true freedom. This was something that everyone wished for. He took a deep breath. For the sake of the High Duke's public house, she should cut off her feelings. Shen Yinghu said, the public house will benefit the most from cutting off her feelings. You will be hurt. She will be hurt, but the regal sword scripture will quickly heal her heart. In the end, you will be the only one who will be hurt. The public house will suffer the most. She will have a hard time too. You will benefit the most. Chu Li smiled. It's actually very easy to choose. It's not hard to choose, no matter who it is. Shen Yinghu shook her head and said, yet she hesitated and struggled. She was in so much pain that she caused the fire in her heart to reverse. She was badly injured. Chu Li thought of the second lady from back then. She looked weak and frail, but she did not hesitate to sacrifice herself for the High Duke's public house. Shaoqi seemed to be very decisive. She always thought about the High Duke's public house, but she was struggling and hesitating at this critical juncture. He couldn't make up his mind. He was proud, sweet, and pitiful at the same time. It was hard to tell what exactly he was feeling. She naturally knew what was important and what was good and what was bad. She didn't want to let him down and hurt his heart. It was difficult to satisfy both sides in the world. This was the source of pain. Chu Li recalled Shaoqi's words when they first met, and he knew that she had already made up her mind. This moved him even more, and he also felt pity for her. All right, I'm just telling you, you can do whatever you want. Shen Yinghu sighed. She's an adult now. She can make her own decisions. I won't interfere. An enlightened master might not be happy, but a grandmaster might not be in pain. Chu Li nodded slowly. The next morning, the sun shone through the open window. Chu Li sat on the bed and was deep in thought. He had been sitting for the whole night. His thoughts ran like a galloping horse. He did not sleep for the whole night. Based on his nature, he would tell Shaoqi that there was no need to forcefully cultivate the regal sword scripture. He would become an enlightened master and protect the High Duke's public house. All she had to do was be his woman and not worry about anything. However, he asked himself in his heart, if he answered honestly and without deceiving himself, did he really have the confidence to become an enlightened master? Could he really protect the High Duke's public house by himself? He had the omniscient mirror divine power, the life and death scripture, and he had extraordinary wisdom. However, there was only one enlightened master in the world. It was possible that the Tempest Temple had another one. There were countless talents in the Tempest Temple. There were many who were as intelligent as him, and there were also some who cultivated divine powers. The Tempest Temple had thousands of years of inheritance. Their foundation was beyond imagination. Their study was even more mysterious. It was not impossible that there was no one who could surpass the life and death scripture. For hundreds of years, there was only one person who became an enlightened master. Was he really confident? If he said he was confident, he would be deceiving himself and being arrogant. The regal sword scripture was an ancient study. There was a 70% chance of becoming an enlightened master. Would he give it up for him? If the High Duke's public house was in trouble, declining or falling apart, he would be a sinner. How could he face Shao Qi? A faint fragrance drifted in. Shao Qi entered the house lightly and sat on the garden stool under the window. She sat under the morning sun. She was still dressed in a white gown. There was not a speck of dust on her body. She looked like an otherworldly fairy. Chu Li looked at her face and smiled. Are your injuries better now? It's fine. Shao Qi shook her head and looked at his face. My master looked for you yesterday, right? Chu Li smiled and nodded. What did she say? She was just curious. She wanted to see how I looked like. You don't have to mind what master said. Will your injury take a long time to heal? There's no rush. The two of them fell silent. Chu Li had made up his mind and was thinking about how to speak. The house was unusually quiet. The martial arts field's laughter could be heard from afar. Shao Qi sat quietly with a smile on her lips. She felt peaceful and happy. She wished that time would stop at this moment. You should cultivate the regal sword scripture. Don't choose the Snow Lunar Pavilion's heart technique. Chu Li said. Shao Qi was stunned and looked at him. Chu Li said, I've never thought about being with you. Shao Qi frowned. Master told you yesterday, right? Chu Li said, we're not the same people. You're indifferent. I'm greedy. You just want to live a peaceful life. I want to travel the world to pursue prosperity and wealth. Even if we're together, we'll still be separated. Shao Qi glared at him snappily. Chu Li said, you're cold and quiet. It's boring to be with you. What else? Shao Qi scoffed. You're not beautiful enough. You're not as pretty as the second lady. You like second sister? Of course I like her. No wonder you tried so hard to save her. You didn't even care about your own life. Shao Qi said coldly. Chu Li said, the second lady is the most beautiful woman in the world. Which man wouldn't like her? He knew that the second lady was the most effective weapon to make her harden her heart. Shut up, Shao Qi said coldly. Chu Li sighed. Actually, this is the reason why I'm here. Because of what Master said, right? Shao Qi scoffed. Chu Li shook his head. If I really want to be with you, can what your master said change? Shao Qi looked at him coldly. Chu Li sighed. The relationship between a man and a woman is like a firewood. It burns brightly but extinguishes quickly. Instead of that, why don't we just be friends? Our interactions are as light as water. We can meet occasionally and be happy. We can live our own lives on our own. Isn't that good? I understand. Shao Qi stood up expressionlessly and turned to leave. Chu Li stared at her. Based on her arrogant personality, what he said was enough. She would understand what he meant and know what to do. It was impossible to have everything in this world. There would always be a choice. Regardless of whether he would regret it in the future, he did not regret it at this moment. He held his chest. It hurt terribly. Chapter 2:51. Chu Li sat in front of the window and watched as Shao Qi walked onto the snow lake and entered her waterside pavilion along the plank road. Soon, her graceful figure disappeared. He felt as if a piece of his heart had been forcefully dug out, and his body felt weak and powerless. The morning sun shone on his body, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of warmth. The world seemed to have lost its color, and the originally beautiful valley became empty and desolate. The intoxicating aura it emitted also disappeared. He sat there for a long time until Suru came over and asked him to eat. He followed Suru to her waterside pavilion. Xiaoqi was dressed in a snow-white robe. She sat quietly by the window and glanced at him without saying a word. Chu smiled and sat opposite her. Suru rolled her eyes. Their actions were no different from usual, but there seemed to be a strange atmosphere between them that was different from usual. She looked carefully. It seemed that the lady's gaze was more active, and she kept staring at Chu Li. Chu Li was not to be outdone, and the two of them looked at each other from time to time. She chuckled to herself. It seemed that the relationship between the two of them had improved greatly. After the meal, Chu Li said, "I'll pay a visit to the elders today. I'll be leaving tomorrow." "Leave?" Suru's eyes widened. "Why the rush?" "What's supposed to go has to go," Chu Li said. "I still have things to do. Let's stay for a few more days. We can leave after senior sister finishes her isolated cultivation." Suru glanced at Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi calmly said, "If he wants to leave, let him leave." Suru was extremely unwilling as she stared at Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi said, "He's going to take care of business. It's not like he won't see you again." "But this is too rushed." Suru scoffed. Chu Li smiled. "I'm planning to raise an eagle so that it can deliver letters. This is a good idea." Suru smiled and said, "Old Master Zhu's golden eagle is very intelligent. I will ask him for the secret method of taming it." Chu Li nodded and took a deep look at Xiaoqi before he stood up and left. He visited Wang Wenxi, Jiang Chunyue, and Li Qinglue one by one and said his goodbyes. Finally, he came to Shun Yinghu's waterside pavilion. Shun Yinghu was sitting in the pavilion. She looked at the lake lazily and was in a daze. Her charming eyes seemed to be filled with sorrow. Chu Li walked into the pagoda and sat opposite her. Shun Yinghu supported her chin with her hands. She looked at him lazily. Chu Li replied, "I've already told Xiaoqi that she'll continue to cultivate the regal sword scripture." Shun Yinghu looked him up and down, her clear eyes sweeping back and forth. She shook her head. "You will regret this." "I hope so." Chu Li smiled. "I look forward to meeting her as an enlightened master. By then, she will have no feelings for you." "It's okay. I'll make sure she does." Chu Li smiled. When she first entered the High Duke's public house, she also cultivated the regal sword scripture, so she won't fall for men. "You've got guts." Shun Yinghu revealed a charming smile. "No wonder Xiaoqi likes you. But you have to understand, when you entered the public house, the regal sword scripture was just a piece of cloth wrapped around her heart. When she became an enlightened master, there was already a wall surrounding her heart. I can break this wall." Chu Li took out a letter and handed it to Shun Yinghu. Shun Yinghu took the letter and touched it. There was a jade pendant inside. Chu Li said, "Senior, you know when to give it to her." "All right. When are you leaving?" "I'll leave tonight." "You can come visit young Ru often." Shun Yinghu said, "Xiaoqi is in isolation. She's lonely." Chu Li nodded. He stood up and closed fist saluted. Shun Yinghu sighed and waved her hand. Chu Li slowly left the pagoda. Not long after he returned to the pavilion, Su Ru came over with a bundle in her hand. Chu Li sat on the couch and looked at her with a smile. Su Ru stared at Chu Li. "Did you two have a fight?" "I guess so." Chu Li smiled. She'll be fine after a while. I don't know what you two are doing. Su-Ru shook her head. But she's in a bad mood. Chu-Li nodded. She's still pretending to be fine. Su-Ru scoffed. You must have made her angry. Only you have the ability to do so. Shao-Chi cultivated the regal sword scripture. She had a cold personality and her emotions were always calm. It was hard for others to make her angry. Her emotions would not fluctuate. Chu-Li sighed and smiled. This is what she asked me to send. Su-Ru opened the bundle. Inside was a moon-white robe. It was flawless and not so white that it was eye-catching. It was also spotless. She said that you will look good in it. Su-Ru took it out and shook it. She passed it to him. Try it on and see if it fits. Chu-Li took off his outer shirt and put on the white robe. The material of the white robe was strange. It was soft and heavy. It felt like Shao-Chi's skin. It was cool and warm, delicate and flexible. This is made from moon hemp. It's very rare and has many benefits. It's resistant to water and fire, swords and knives. Most importantly, it's spotless. It won't get dirty no matter what. Shao, she has won. She made this robe for you. It looks like it fits. Su-Ru looked at it and said, Chu-Li said, she has such skills. What do you think? Su-Ru smiled. Her needlework is very good. She made her own clothes. This is the first time she made it for someone else. It fits very well. Just wear it. Chu-Li smiled and nodded. Su-Ru clapped her hands. All right, do you have anything in return? Nothing. Chu-Li shook his head. Su-Ru rolled her eyes. Chu-Li smiled. Thank her for me. I'm not going to tell you. Su-Ru scoffed. She waved her hand and left. The moonlight was like water. Chu-Li walked out of the pavilion and down the plank road.